Hello, welcome to Cable's Conquests. I'm your host, Archie Cable, and we're here to talk about Marvel Crisis Protocol.
The name's Cable. Remember it.
Hello, welcome back to Cable's Conquests. Very excited to be here. I'm your host for the day, Archie Cable, and joining me is my co-host, Curtis Hodgson. Curtis, how are you going?
Hi Archie, yeah, I'm doing great, thank you. And hi everyone, it's good to be back, sort of back to our usual standard format after an exciting WTC. Are you well recovered after the WTC?
Yeah, it's felt like it's been a long time since I was in WTC. I had a great time, but definitely need some recovery. So this is my first event 2 months or something like that on from WTC. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck back in and getting stuck in with some new toys.
You might have forgotten how to play in that time. This is nervy for you. What event are we doing today?
We're going back to Bad Moon Cafe. We're going back to our roots.
Excellent.
So this is a standard event at Bad Moon, one of the monthly Bad Moon events, but it's got a slight twist in it because it's a Train Wars. So you may recall, listeners, that I went to Dice Saloon almost a year ago now. And what the communities in Brighton and the communities in London have done is they've got together and done a 2-part tournament. So a couple of weeks ago was an event in Brighton at Dice Saloon, which unfortunately I wasn't able to go to. And this Bad Moon event in London is kind of the second part. So they're 2 separate tournaments and you can attend both or either. But the winner of the overall double tournament of the 2 tournaments, the highest score across both, wins a big prize.
That sounds fantastic. And it's a relatively short train journey, isn't it, from Brighton to London, or at least they're regular trains. So we share a lot of the same community. A lot of the Brighton players will be coming up to London events. A lot of those London players will go down to the Brighton events. So there's a healthy rivalry between the 2 communities. Yeah, I think it's fair to say, observing the first edition of Train Wars, the event down in Brighton, that Brighton got the better of London in that. I think it was Nick Cork who won the event, so congratulations to him. Yeah. However, London have their opportunity to win on home turf because unfortunately Nick, I don't think, is attending tomorrow, and there's an absolute glut of the top London players going along. So yeah.
So Nick won the event and Pat ended on 4-0 as well. So there were 2 4-0s at the Brighton event. But yes, as you say, Nick isn't going. Funny story about that. So I wasn't sure if I could go to either. I wasn't able to go to the Brighton one in the end. So I got a ticket off Darren, who's one of the London guys, who'd got a ticket for both events, but ended up not being able to go to either. So I got his London one, and it was Nick Cork that got his Brighton leg.
Oh, wow. So are you embodying Nick then for this second leg of the tournament? Fantastic. Right, okay, so you've got a win under your belt already.
Exactly. I'll take that and run.
Excellent. And you've done, obviously, Train Wars before. Yeah. Do you want to give the listeners a sort of brief reminder of that event and what you took? Are you taking the same thing again this time for the continuity?
No. So I'm taking something a little different, something new, something exciting. I'm kind of seeing this as a separate event as well. So this is the last event I'll be going to this year. But at the start of next year, we've got a big exciting event, which is the Weekender is returning.
Oh, of course, the Mutant Weekender in London, the big 2-dayer.
Exactly. And so I'm seeing this as my last opportunity to go to an event and practice for it. So the roster that I'm taking to this event is most likely going to be the roster that I take to the Weekender, or some kind of, I'll learn from my mistakes in this one inevitably and probably switch it up a little bit.
Inevitably, yeah. We love an audition here on Cable's Conquest. Yep. So without further ado, let's get stuck into your roster and let's find out who has made the cut for your practice event at the Train Wars.
You're boring me. If you want to help me nail him, get your team together and let's get started.
So Archie, you've flirted with us and told us you've got some new toys come in. Let's get stuck into it. What's your roster? What will you be bringing to Bad Moon?
So I think it will become fairly obvious what affiliation I'm going for. So going in order of threat, highest first. We've got Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider, Blade, Dr. Voodoo, Iron Fist, Encanto the Living Mummy, Black Panther, Chosen of Bast, Wong, Hela, Queen of Hell, and Craven the Hunter. My tactics cards are, here's the dead giveaway. If you haven't guessed which affiliation already, Siege of Darkness, Bats the Ghost Hound, Heroes for Hire, Service to Anubis, Highway to Hell, Deal with the Devil, Survival, Instant Recovery, Sacrifice, and Brace for Impact. And then my crises are for Secures, Infinity Formula Goes Missing, Deadly Meteors, and Portals Overrun City with Spider People, and Extracts are Struggle for the Cube, Montesi Formula, and Fear Grips World as Worthy Terrorize Cities, aka Hammers.
Well, so obviously you're going for leaderless defenders here with all those characters. No, obviously that's a terrible joke with Siege of Darkness in there. It's Midnight Suns, isn't it? So
Gotta be Midnight Suns.
Is this the new flavour then you're trying out?
Yes. So I surprised myself with how excited I got about these monsters because I've never really come across them in the comics, and I'm not normally a big horror movie guy. But I've looked at Midnight Suns for a while, and I actually had loads of the models already. Defenders has a lot of crossover, and there's a few in there that I've used before and I really like. And then when I was keen to pick up this Monsters pack, and I'm doing something a bit special for the Weekender, but I won't spoil anything here. That's just a little teaser. I wanted to really dig into Midnight Suns. So that's what I'm doing for this. So I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Well, it's obviously Blade has been in the game for a long time now. I think he was one of the earlier releases, so his bump has been part of the game, for pretty much the whole entire time. Blade, though, himself in his life cycle has had a bit of a glow up. He had a bit of a buff in one of the more recent erratas, so perhaps a little bit better than he was. And we are seeing sort of a lot more play in it. You've really lent into a lot of these newer characters here, which is great. Out of the newer characters, obviously, you've gone for Werewolf by Night and Nkantu. What is it that draws you to those characters over, say, the Frankenstein's monster and, gosh, I forget who the fourth one is in that box. Is it
Dracula?
Dracula himself. Oh god, how can I forget? So yeah, what draws you to those characters over the other two new ones?
So in that box, there's Dracula, who is not affiliated to Midnight Suns, and then is the other three are all affiliated. And in my opinion, Frankenstein's monster is a little vanilla.
Right. Okay.
He's got a really strong kit, but I'm not sure how interesting it is. I also am not sure how good he is with the bump because he struggles for power generation.
Right. Okay. So if he's spending one power in his turn to get that movement, it might mean what he can do next is lacking. So there's no point in bumping. Gotcha.
The other thing is, I just think Werewolf by Night and Nkantu look really fun. They've got some really interesting kit, especially Werewolf. I think he's got a medium base, medium move. He has a short pounce like Sabertooth.
Wow.
So he can throw himself into enemy characters. And he's got a range 3 attack with a wild place next to someone. So he's really fast. And with that bump, suddenly he essentially has a equivalent of a range 4 attack if he has the 1 power. Because if you're in range 4 of someone, you can bump and then attack from range 3. So the bump just really increases his action economy.
And it sounds like he can, with that bump as well, get himself in range and then use characters with his place to pretty much move across the entirety of the board. And in doing that, he's got great action economy because he's getting movement and attacks. And if he's, say, maybe misplaced or he's been thrown, with his medium base, that bump just gets him back in. It also might mean that pounce gets in range to actually hit and do damage rather than just be movement. So It's making sure he can get maximum efficiency for the low cost of 1 power. It's a great leadership.
You've hit the nail on the head about I've really lent into action economy with this roster. I think that the thing with the bump is that it just really improves your action economy. It can be seen almost as like a pseudo charge, like a very short range charge.
Yep.
So I've decided to really lean into that so that my characters are really getting the most out of being able to move with a bump and then move off their attacks and do things like that. So Werewolf really does that. Nkantu does that a little bit less. His action economy can be quite poor, but with the bump, he's got this range for 2 power spender, and so it just gives him a little bit more range. And he's really interesting because he's got the soul mechanic, and as you'll observe, I also have Hela in this roster, who also has a soul mechanic. So it's doubling down on this. You get a token each time a character is dazed, or KO'd, meaning that, and then the tokens can be spent by Hela or Encantu. They both have slightly different things that they spend it on to essentially buff their attacks, so their attacks become much better.
Excellent.
So that's the idea.
So you're looking for this action economy. You've got a lot of medium or large bases in there. Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider, Doctor Voodoo, Black Panther, Hela. They're all on these large bases, getting making the maximum of that range one place. What is your overall game plan when you turn up to the table? What is it you're planning to make happen?
Yeah, so my thinking is with this roster is it's wide attrition. So the idea is that I go quite wide. So I'm thinking around 5 wide because I want my 5 threats to be coming along, but I don't want to get too low on numbers. But if I can go 5 wide on a reasonably wide map, I think these characters are really good one-on-one because I think all of them have got good attacks. And with the bump and any extra movement that they have, they can often double tap and move. So that really makes a massive difference when you're fighting these one-on-ones, because on these wider maps, say you're on a D map, so often your opponent is having to move before they can attack you. Whereas I'm thinking I can double tap and move.
And as well, with Siege of Darkness, you have an opportunity to potentially get that third attack in.
Yeah.
And the wider you are, the more likely that Siege of Darkness turn is going to be incredibly effective.
Yeah.
And something that I've learned quite recently is you can declare Siege of Darkness before you declared which character you go with.
Yeah.
So when you've set yourself up with all your bumps in the previous turn or whatever, and everyone's within range 2, range 3, whatever they need to be for their free attack, and you just do your siege turn, you see how devastating it is. Sometimes the attacks give you triggers to reposition, replace, and move things about. Once you've seen the board state, you can then decide who you go with. It sounds like if you're going wide attrition, that Siege of Darkness turn is going to be quite pivotal to your game plan. If it completely flops, it really slows you down.
Yeah.
But if it's really effective, it can be a game winner.
Yeah, and I think with this siege turn, that option to have that flexibility to have it early, and this is why I've got 8 affiliated characters. I've only got 2 unaffiliated characters, so I've got 8 affiliated characters because it means that if I'm going 5 wide, I want at least 4 of my characters to be affiliated.
Right.
I think with the siege, it's often the case that you won't get it with everyone, but if you have enough characters on the board, you're able to do it with more characters. So I think that's kind of the thinking, is I essentially go wide with predominantly Midnight Suns and only bring in one of my splashes if I have a specific reason to.
Sure. And then coming on to those splashes, you've got Hela, who I think thematically works really nicely. She is, what is it? She's Queen of Hell. So, it's all about death. She seems to sit hand in hand with Ghost Rider there and all your other sort of classic monsters. It's style points. 100%.
Thanks.
But you must have a reason why she's there competitively if you're planning to take her to the Mutant Weekender as well.
So I think her stock has gone up massively in somewhere like Midnight Suns since Eyes on the Prize left.
Right, okay.
Because what she can do is she is my midline steal. So you'll notice as well that all of my extracts have at least 1 in the middle. And so what Hela can do is she's got medium move on medium base, gains 2 power in the power phase, so she can medium move, bump to the middle, grab the middle one, and then she's got another move. So that makes her a really safe grab. And then people might think, oh, why don't you take Bill? I mean, maybe Bill would be better, but I don't like Bill.
We don't like Bill here on Cable's Conquest. If Hela does the same thing and fits the theme better, then she is better than Bill.
Exactly, but I also think that because she has this range 4 attack, 6 dice mystic attack, she is much more likely to have more action economy in the next round. So she steals round 1, and then the next round she can bump or advance herself short with Death's Embrace, which is the one where she gets a short advance and can explode people if she's close enough. And then she's got this range 4 attack. So actually she really fits that game plan of the action economy that I've been talking about, because she's got a short advance, she's a bump on a medium base, and she's got a range 3 and a range 4 attack.
Okay. And then your other splash is, I always see him in your rosters, and
you don't see him anywhere else.
I don't see him anywhere else. It's Craven the Hunter. When are you taking Craven over one of your affiliated 3 options like Iron Fist or Black Panther Chosen of Bast? What does he bring that those don't?
So he is auditioning. He is.
Right, good.
I'll tell you now. There's a few characters that are auditioning, and he's the first that I'll talk about because you've brought him up. So I think Craven in Midnight Suns is really good because the bump elevates him so much. So Craven's ideal play pattern is probably to go top of a round. He has a range 2 attack, which is a 5 dice attack. And then he has a range 3 attack, which is 4 dice. But if he's made his range 2 attack already against that character, he adds 3 dice to the next attack.
Nice.
So essentially what you want him to do is you want to attack from range 2. Normally, you're chasing a wild off a 5 dicer, which gives him an elusive trigger. So then he gets out of range 2, gets into range 3 of the same character, does his now 7 dice attack. And after the 7 dice attack, if he is moved that turn, he gets a medium move.
Right, okay.
So there's quite a lot going on with Craven. There's a lot of kind of setup to try and get him to do his ideal turn. But if he does, he hits really hard. And the bump helps, because essentially the bump means that he can bump from out of range 2 into range 2, do his first attack, and then do his second attack, and he can get a medium move.
Yeah, it guarantees that you don't need the trigger.
So he plays into that. He's fast, and he's got action economy if he's in the right position. He also has 3 power superpower, which essentially puts a token on a character, and all allied characters, including himself, add 1 dice to their attacks against that character for the remainder of the round. So if he can go at the top of round 1, suddenly Werewolf's got a 7 dicer, Blade's got a 6 dice mystic with a pierce. All of these characters suddenly elevate their attack dice. And as I said, I want to go wide attrition. So if I have a character that's like got a target on its back, say a Web Warriors character that's really pesky, that I'm more likely to be able to one-shot, then that's winning. So that's why Craven is in.
Right, okay.
He's essentially a 3-threat glass cannon, but he can really punch above his weight.
And it sounds like he can also help you take down some of those big kaijus in the game.
Yes.
Because they're more likely to have to take multiple attacks from your team, and if everyone's adding a dice, it's just putting hopefully more damage through onto that.
Yeah.
You know, a siege turn that follows you popping that token onto a Hulk could potentially remove that Hulk from the table in turn 2.
Say you go with Craven first. If you have the power at the start of the round, you do a 6 dice attack into an 8 dice attack, and then you siege. And everyone's adding 1 extra dice. Suddenly you're able to get say 4 attacks in a round with better dice. And actually, because the Midnight Suns hit pretty well anyway, you've got pretty good odds of nailing a character in that round.
Okay, I think I'm convinced.
I love Craven.
I still think I want to see the audition, because obviously, you know, in this game, you've only specifically looked to try and hit 2 splashes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there are so many great 3s in this game. And I think there are lots of options for you. You know, characters that particularly would benefit from that mobility, i.e. because they don't have the mobility in themselves, or that it just gives them extra mobility. So many characters might fit into that slot with you. And it'd be interesting when we look back after the 4 games about whether you even ever played Craven.
Yeah.
Because my next question is looking at your crises.
Mm-hmm.
You've not gone for crises, which I would normally see paired together, which is quite interesting. It's a very Archie Cable thing to do, to sort of be thinking outside the box. Specifically, your extracts, you've got Montesi in there, which I normally would associate with those brawly teams that want to be down the middle, want to be super tall, with 2 crises, Struggle for the Cube and Fear Grips, which are both much wider. You know, there's 4 and 5 extracts on the table that are more spread out as well.
Yeah.
So Talk us through that thinking there.
So I think the first thing that I looked at was I'm not convinced by having like extracts where I have to sit in the middle, because I think if I have to sit in the middle, then if my opponent's got big scary things, they'll just beat me up, because my characters are reasonably tanky, but they're not really tanky.
Sure. I mean, it's the nature of going wide attrition, right?
Exactly.
Often they're high damage output individual characters, but because you're wider and they're cheaper, they often suffer and be a bit more glassy.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be coming to the middle.
That ruled out the C's. However, what I do like is having 1, 2 in the case of hammers, central grabs. Because if I win priority, I can steal with Hela, as I've said, and retreat. And it's unlikely that my opponent has a safe steal now that Eyes on the Prize is gone.
Yeah.
So Montesi was in for that reason, because I can get up on extracts quickly, and Cubes is in for a similar reason, because I can get up. And also someone like Werewolf likes Cubes because he gets more power, which means he can do more stuff. And then he's got healing factor too, so if he's holding a cube, takes a damage, and then goes, he heals the damage.
Of course.
Also, so both Cubes and Hammers, people can hold multiple hammers. But I've got Dr. Voodoo, who can basically make someone drop all their hammers. So I'm not too worried about someone just picking up a bunch of extracts and running away with them, because Dr. Voodoo can chase them down and make them drop them.
And actually, if someone is focusing all their extracts on a single character, that sort of works for you, because you can then focus your attacks on that single character. Alternatively, you talked about you back your characters going one-on-one with other characters. So actually having extracts all over the board and having pinch points for your opponent to have to respond to, oh God, am I going to lose this extract to Werewolf by Night, or am I going to lose this extract to Ghost Rider? Like, that's a decision I need to make. And when they make it, you can then go with the other. And I suppose you can reliably then trade extracts, given that there are enough on the table.
I think that's it. And also I quite like the slight disparity in the number of extracts, because it'll make your opponent think twice about what they choose. They're like, oh, both Cubes and Hammers are pretty good for me because I've got good steals and I can do this and that. But what if I draw Montesi? Then I'm having to suddenly pivot to like a more attrition game plan. It's not an easy thing to be like, oh, they're an extract team.
Yes, yeah.
So that's the thinking.
So then moving on to your secures, you said you don't like Cs. You've brought an Eye. And for those not familiar, Eye is just a wonky C with Deadly Meteors. It's also a pay to flip. You've gone with another pay to flip in Portals, but then you've gone with Infinity Formula. I think Infinity Formula is your favourite secure, because I think it features almost as often as Craven does in your rosters.
Yeah. If I'm in doubt, I put in Infinity Formula.
Yeah, that extra power, it just makes everyone happy. It's nice for MCP, but I assume it's particularly there. You like the B map?
I like the B map. I've got wheels. Ghost Rider with the bump and his Hell on Wheels can move across the board in one without using any actions. Werewolf by Night can similarly do that if he's got the power, because he can, if there's someone within range 3, he can like bump, attack them, and potentially place next to them.
Yeah.
If he whiffs, then he can throw himself. So he's similarly quick. So basically I've designed these secures based on my 5 threats. This is a little bit experimental. I think my favourite one, because it catches people, is Spider Portals, because people don't really like that very much.
No, people do hate on. They don't like the place being so random. It's
Exactly.
really wide, so you can get severely punished by it by being moved to the wrong side of the wide secure.
Yeah, and I think actually what is good for my roster is, so I have very good energy in Ghost Rider and Werewolf, and both those characters are very fast, so they quite like D maps. Especially Ghost Rider likes this one because he can essentially move between the Ds without doing an action, which is ridiculously strong.
That is nuts.
Yes, he's more likely to be placed, but I think the place affects him less than other characters because he can bump back and still move long on a big base.
Yeah, which is amazing.
So that's in there. Then Infinity Formula, for the reason I said, Deadly Meteors is a late swap for Cosmic Invasion, which is the other D map that's not Riot Sparks. But I've chosen to try out Deadly Meteors because, again, that pay to flip is really good for me because I can move between all of the points really quickly and not use actions. So again, both Ghost Rider and Werewolf by Night are very quick between these points.
Okay, so when you win priority and you say you go with your secures, you're always looking to be bringing one of those 5 threats because the game plan seems to be built around them.
Most of the time, I'd like to bring a 5 threat.
Yeah.
And I think
Nice.
the only way I can't is by playing at 16. And that's partly why Cosmic Invasion dropped out, because it's a 16. And the way that I've set it up is that I can avoid 15 and 16 if I want to.
Right, yes, of course. All of yours are either 17 or 18. So I imagine you've got some cracking 17, 18 rosters, and it's the only time you're not playing 17 or 18 is when you win priority and your opponent chooses a threat from their extracts.
Exactly. So yeah, my 17 or 18 is going to be Blade, obviously, one of my 5s, depending on which I prefer for the matchup, and then fill out with 3s and 2s.
Okay, interesting.
Or if I want to take Hela, then maybe I consider dropping one of my 5s.
Right, okay. So, but you would imagine only do that if you felt it was necessary for you to get that safe grab in the middle.
Exactly. If I win priority and there's needed for a safe grab, then I'd do that.
But I imagine, actually, say Montesi was pulled and you had priority, you don't necessarily mind your opponent taking the middle if they don't necessarily have a safe grab themselves, because that's a target for you.
Yeah. And with all my characters, I can actually get quite a few attacks into them.
Yeah. And given Montesi is so low scoring, going 2-1 down on that, if you can go either, if you can get an attrition win, that's a win for you.
Yeah, exactly. So on this audition, just because I know we've been talking for a while about it, but I just want to come back to this kind of audition. There is a glaring omission in my roster, and that is glaring omission in the shape of Immortal Hulk.
Yeah, I was going to suggest this. What's the thinking behind that?
So I think my thinking is that Immortal Hulk will probably make my Weekender roster, because I think he is a big scary thing that your opponent has to respect in their roster building. And if he never sees the table, he's probably doing his job by giving my opponent mental tax before. But also with Midnight Suns, he's much better than he was when I played Defenders, where I really struggled with him. But I wanted to not take him this one because I didn't want to lean on him, and I wanted to try out a few characters. So the characters so Craven being a key one, and then my other 3s, I essentially want to see which 3s do I take, and one of them will probably drop out for Immortal Hulk. Because I think, Craven could be dropped because he's unaffiliated, but for the reasons I've explained, I think he's really strong in Midnight Suns. Black Panther, Chosen of Bast, I think is really good on the pay-to flips if he has the power, but he struggles for power, so he might drop. I think Encantu will stay because he's new and exciting.
Yeah, freshly painted up.
Yeah, exactly. And then Iron Fist, I think, is really good against the big kaijus, but not for killing them, but for activating them. So he does kind of the opposite to what Craven is doing. He's kind of controlling the big scary things, whereas Craven is actually just like killing them. And it's whether I'd actually play Immortal Hulk. So the audition is really those 3s space. I have considered dropping Voodoo, but I think a steal is just really important.
An affiliated steal.
Yeah.
It's a model you've got practice with. If you didn't own Dr. Voodoo and you wanted to play Midnight Suns, I'd be like, don't just, you don't need to go out and buy him for this one event. But
yeah.
Given that you have him.
Yeah.
He's painted up.
Yeah.
He's affiliated. He's a bit of an auto take, is he not? Especially with that medium base, his damage output, his power gen.
I think he's an auto take when I'm against objective teams. I don't think he's an auto take generally because the game plan that I'm going for is this action economy, and his action economy can be quite poor.
Right.
Because he doesn't have any, his bump is really helpful, but then he doesn't have any movement. So if I have to bump to get in range and then have to move back, whereas a lot of my other characters that I can take can bump to get in range, do 2 attacks, and still move again.
Punishing your opponent, you're getting 2 attacks off, your opponent is now having to move an attack.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
he puts himself at risk from the bump.
Exactly. So Dr. Voodoo is in there, but I think he's in there for the likes of Web Warriors and Hellfire Club. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. So that is my thinking, is that Immortal Hulk will probably get in exchange for one of the 3s, and it is audition time. So maybe one of the 3s won't ever get taken, or maybe one of the 3s I'll go with and I'll be just like not doing enough.
And that's quite telling in itself. If they'd never get selected, you never, over 4 games, you never have an opportunity to bring them.
Yeah.
That might be because they're just not fulfilling a sufficient role, or you do, like you say, you do bring someone and they just absolutely flop. So, no, it's going to be an interesting one. And there's a lot of opponents there. It's going to be a real testy. Hopefully, there'll be a nice diversity of affiliations for you to go up against. One last thing I wanted to touch on before we move on into the games. It's about the leader himself. So yes. He's going to be the one model you're going to be bringing to every single game. So he's obviously been around for a while. He had a bit of a glow up, but still, you don't see him a lot outside of Midnight Suns. He's an affiliated Avenger. Rarely see him in Avengers. He's an affiliated Defender, I think, as well. And I rarely see him in Defenders, let alone out of his affiliation. Is Blade rubbish? What are your thoughts?
I think that Blade is underrated.
Hot take.
I don't think that he is a premium 4 threat because of his reliability, but I think in Midnight Suns with that bump, that leadership is really strong, especially with the new stuff that's come out with this these more medium bases. So I think you bring him in Midnight Suns particularly for that alone. But actually, as a 4-threat character, I think he's got a lot going for him. He's got an out-of-action shake. He doesn't really care about conditions. He can heal himself by giving out bleed, and he gives out bleed on a stick. Like his builder, which is range 2,
it's fairly reliable.
is auto bleed. His spender is auto bleed, and his range 4 throwing glaives is a wild bleed. So he's got a lot going for him. And his spender is really good. Like, I've had some games where he's just shut down one side of the board because he comes up against someone who's attacking him with like physical attacks. He's just re-rolling all his dice and he's succeeding. Bats the Ghost Hound, the card helps him survive a little bit longer. And then if he survives, he's got loads of power. He can attack someone. If they're then bleeding, his spender allows him to re-roll any number of dice. So it is then a 7 dice, range 3 mystic attack, re-rolling any number, and he has a medium move afterwards. I think he's got kit. I think he's got game.
I think you're right. I think I like the fact he can pay for rerolls in defense, but he does have a glaring weakness to energy. But I mean, who doesn't? I feel like every time I turn up the table, my whole team's got a glaring weakness against energy.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of a weakness there. I think you're right. He is a useful piece. And because he fits into that game plan that you've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or so, in that you want to be attacking and disengaging.
Yes.
Because that's maximizing your own action economy. It's reducing your opponent's action economy. They have to then move to respond to you. And Blade does that so well. So if not only is he giving you a fantastic leadership, but his kit and his whole game plan is designed in the same way your team is playing. So no wonder he feels so much better in that team than he does elsewhere. You know, his pursuit on those throwing glaives allows him to then move after his attacks. Obviously, the bump will help him get in range for these attacks. And then, like you say, you know, if he gets himself into a position where he can then use the spender, often that medium move to just get the hell out of there is great. Or that medium move to get himself in range of a bunch of people who've got bleed on them, and then he heals up, and then suddenly he's healthy again. And I think that's why he's good.
Yeah. I'm not convinced about him splashed elsewhere. I'd actually seriously consider him in Dracula, because I think giving out bleed in Dracula is just really, like, that's what you're doing, and he does that almost as well as anyone in the game. Yeah, I think Midnight Suns really elevates him. And to me, he seems similar to Daredevil in that regard. Like, Daredevil in Defenders, really, his leadership is worth taking him. And then as a 4 threat, he can do work.
Yeah.
But there are so many 4 threats in the game now that I think Blade's issue is there's just too many of them. I think he's good. I think he's really good, but you could name a bunch of other 4 threats that have a similar problem to him, just because when you're splashing, there are other characters that you'd prefer.
And it's the nature of the game. And with certain affiliations, there is real value to being affiliated, which really brings these characters to those, you know, to sort of bring this back to X-Men. I know it's a Midnight Suns episode, but I'm toying between 2 long-moving characters. One of them is affiliated in Kitty Pryde. The other one is not affiliated in Quicksilver. Personally, I think Quicksilver's kit synergizes with Professor X a lot more.
Yeah.
However, his turn 1 is nowhere near as good because he can't use first class, and purely because he's unaffiliated. Therefore, it's a really difficult decision about whether you splash him or not ahead of the likes of Kitty Pryde. And I think Blade often fits into that category when you compare him to other 4 threats. There will usually always be another 4 threat that's doing that role, if not better, who will then get additional benefit by being affiliated in those other teams. Whereas at home in Midnight Suns, he's an auto. Well, he has to be there.
Yes,
but he's good as well.
He's also unfortunate that he's in the other affiliations he's in. There are a load of 4 threats that are really good.
Yeah, they're the biggest affiliations, aren't they, in Avengers and Defenders? There's so much choice there.
With Elsa Bloodstone coming around the corner for Midnight Suns as a new leader, it'll be interesting to see what happens to Blade. But I just think, I personally, I mean, I'm new to Midnight Suns, but I personally think that Blade is well worth the leadership slot. He is not a wasted slot, especially with his leadership.
I don't see him going anywhere, even if there is, you know, a new leadership that's great. It'll just be potentially another different way to play Midnight Suns.
Exactly.
Rather than a better one or a worse one, because Blade plays his own game plan very well. Yeah. And that's always going to be good. Excellent. I feel like that's been a really interesting deep dive. I've never dabbled in Midnight Suns. In fact, I bought Blade and Moon Knight the box back when I first started playing this game, because I just think the characters are really cool, but they remained pretty much unpainted in my pile of shame for now next to 2 years. And the blade that you're using is in fact that blade that was part of my pile of shame. So I'm mightily pleased that he's going to see some tabletop time, and fingers crossed you do him justice.
Yes. So thank you for allowing me the option of playing Midnight Suns.
You've done me a favour. This year I've been all about getting my ratios of painted to non-painted better, and you just taking him improve those digits. So no, you've done me a favour. But anyway, thank you very much for that, Archie. Let's get stuck into your games.
Let's do it.
So Archie, we come to it. Round 1. You've turned up in London.
Yep.
You're at Bad Moon. You're ready to go. Who is your first opponent, and what have they brought to the table?
So yeah, I've travelled down from up from Southampton. Yeah, I've travelled up with Carl, who's my new friend that I've been playing games with. So I've found an in-person. Shout out to Carl for my in-person training. Yeah, so I rock up at the table and I'm against Aaron. So Aaron Seymour is the guy who runs the Brighton events. So he ran the Brighton leg of Train Wars. I've played him once, well over a year ago. Haven't played him since, but I've seen him around a bit. So it was nice to get a game in against him, and he was buzzing because he was actually able to play, because normally when he TOs he doesn't play.
Oh, excellent. Oh, good. So yeah, he's been able to take part at least.
Exactly. So we roll priority, and we actually both have extremely good priority rolls, but Aaron wins it. And Aaron, I should say, is playing Apocalypse.
Oh, that's exciting.
This is exciting because I've never played against Apocalypse. Before WTC, I did a bit of kind of homework on Apocalypse because one of my teammates was playing him, but I've never actually played with or against him.
But this is nice because there's lots of new toys on the table with your monsters from the monster box and what came out similar time as Apocalypse as well. So it should be quite fresh, actually. Lots of, the opportunities here are endless.
Yeah, exactly. And so he goes for his secures, and we pull hammers and riot sparks.
Okay.
So one of his secures was riot sparks, which I thought was quite interesting with Apocalypse.
Riot sparks is the one where you can interact with it and heal, right?
Exactly.
Right, and that's not in your roster, is it?
It's not in my roster, but I don't mind the shape. I just don't particularly like the heal. And I choose 18 threat.
Nice.
And so at 18, I go with Blade, of course. Go Hela, Queen of Hell. Iron Fist. Werewolf by Night, seeing the table. And the Faithful Servant Wong.
So talk me through the Hela choice there, because you don't have priority. I thought, when we talked in the roster building section, you talked that she's your safe grab. Are you still thinking about sort of a midline safe grab here, given the fact that you've not got priority?
Yes, I have kind of two reasons. So because we're on hammers, there's a midline grab on either side. So what I can do is line Hela up on one side, and then Aaron has to decide, do I go on that side and grab a hammer, in which case Hela can move up and attack, or does he leave it and I have a safe grab?
Nice. Okay, so she works without priority as well as a threat to whoever's picking up that extract opposite her.
Exactly. So Aaron's list is Apocalypse, Beast, Psylocke, the Blob, and Toad.
Nice. Can you remember which horsemen those were?
No, there was a little bit of confusion about it at the start. I know that Blob is it Famine, because he can place?
With the place, yeah.
With the place.
So I assume Beast was Pestilence then?
No, I think Beast was War.
Right, okay.
Psylocke was Death, and Toad was Pestilence. It was one of those where I think Aaron had slightly made a mistake, he'd said at the start, because he was trying to match up the cards and he could match them up, but it was all a bit complicated. I kind of went with I know generally what they do.
Yep.
I'd spoke to Aaron before. We actually had quite a long conversation about the different types. But I was like, you know what? I'm bound to forget them. So let me just focus on my game. And then when I get Apocalypse, I'll know about it.
It's often the best way, isn't it, with MCP? If you focus on your game, then you sort of see what happens. It's
exactly
a good recipe.
So at the start of the game, Toad goes on one side and he grabs a hammer from range 2. There's a big size 5 building and he's just able to sit off the building, behind the building, and grab the hammer from range 2. And this means, as I said, Hela can go the other side and she has a safe grab.
Nice.
But actually I choose not to safe grab with her because I want to sit on the point. So I decide, actually, I'm just going to sit on the point. I'll grab the hammer and I'll sit on the point, and I back her because I see a beast across the way, and I'm like, okay, Hela should be able to survive a beast. What I did not see hiding behind another big building was a Psylocke.
Yes.
And so actually there was Psylocke and Beast on the my right-hand side, facing off against Hela. And Hela just about survives. I think she survives with 2 health left, 1 or 2 health left.
That's pretty good, because, I mean, if Beast can move and then attack Hela, potentially get a place, and if he's generated enough power, throw her off the point towards Psylocke, who could then potentially double tap with extra dice.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. Hela's done well to survive that.
Yeah, I get away with it a bit. I don't think Beast does the damage he needed to. Or he might not have got the place, actually. Some problem. But also, then it's 2v1 on that side. So I've passed a power with Wong over to Werewolf, who can then pick up my home hammer, and then he moves to the right and is in range 3 of Beast. So he attacks Beasts, does some damage, but unfortunately doesn't get the wild place. So I don't get on that point with him. So that one is Aaron's. But on the other side, I have a blade and an iron fist up against his blob who's moved up. So at the end of the round, we both score 2 hammers, 2 points. So it's 4 all.
You split the room. Who sat on your back point?
Wong.
Well, of course, classic.
Yeah. And his Apocalypse stays on his back point to start with. So he basically goes last with Apocalypse. Apocalypse picks up a hammer and is then able to kind of pivot one way or the other. So he doesn't want
to commit at this stage.
Exactly.
Interesting. Apocalypse being able to use Famine's place means he could reach either side and get an attack off.
Exactly.
But I suppose he doesn't want to lose that point. And if he's already gone with all the other characters, none of them have committed to the back point. So fair enough, Aaron, fair enough.
So then Aaron goes first, and he goes with Toad first. And Toad is having his Pestilence. So what he does is he does his Pestilence Bomb, which gets both Blade and Iron Fist, and he slows them both. So on this D map, suddenly these guys are slowed, and then he runs away to his home objective. Very Toad-like behaviour.
Yeah, good.
On the other side, I'm like, I better go with Hela. And what's really nice about Hela is, I think people slightly forget, is she's got this short advance, which if she ends within range 1, she rolls 4 dice, and on crits and wilds, that character takes the damage. So that's really good. However, if that character takes damage, she heals the amount of damage that she deals.
Oh, okay.
So it means that I get to go first with Hela. I can heal off the riot. I can heal from doing some damage to people. But unfortunately, her attacks don't really do very much. It's a bit of a shame because she's got these 6 dice attacks with a hammer. So she fails to daze either of them, but she's looking a little healthier now with the hammer, which is good. And then Psylocke goes into her, doesn't quite get Hela. But then Werewolf goes, and Werewolf pops off here. So he's got a 7 dice attack because he's holding a hammer. He attacks Psylocke because I'm scared of Psylocke's Mystic into Werewolf. So I'm thinking I've got to take her down. Places off of Psylocke, does his Howl, which means that I think I'd just remove power from people. I don't think I roll my skulls so they don't get any conditions. My thinking was I want to get rid of Beast's power so that he can't do all his dodging nonsense.
Nice. Yes, good.
So I think in the end, Werewolf dazes Psylocke and nearly gets Beast too. I think Beast survives with a reroll from one of the Apocalypse tokens.
Right, yeah.
So Beast is alive on 1 and bleeding, and Psylocke goes down. So Werewolf has had a huge go.
Great turn from Werewolf.
What's great about this is it means that Beast can't really risk attacking Werewolf, because if he does, Werewolf could clap back and kill him potentially.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice play. So instead, Beast goes after Hela and dazes Hela. So Hela's healed a little bit, but then she's taken some damage from Psylocke, and so Beast dazes her. So it's a shame that I couldn't quite get Beast with Werewolf, because it would have meant that Hela would have survived and holding a hammer. And Apocalypse ends up picking up this hammer.
So Apocalypse is now on 2 hammers.
Has 2 hammers. I think this is where I do my Siege of Darkness turn. So I siege with Werewolf after Beast has gone, which dazes Beast, but Werewolf then can't pick up the hammer because it's not his activation. It then drops, and Apocalypse then has to double move to pick it up. So Apocalypse has a nothing turn, but he's now got 2 hammers. So it's kind of I'm okay about it, but I'm not really okay about it. And I think also with the siege, I siege during one of my characters' turns on the left-hand side of the board. I think it was Blade. And in the process, I dazed Blob.
Wow, so you've dazed practically his whole team here.
Yeah, I have a really good round here because Blob hates Mystic.
Yeah, he does. He's only rolling 2 dice.
And actually, Blade is quite good against Blob because what he can do is he does a Mystic attack, he then gets pushed. I think I just actually move back onto the point with a bump. I then do my siege, which gets Blob.
Nice.
So regardless of kind of what happens, with the siege, I'm able to get through Blob's health pool because he's rolling only 2 defense dice. And I have a pierce. So Blade does his job. And because Iron Fist is slowed, he kind of chases Toad, but unfortunately he can't quite get onto the point, even with a bump. So the double short move
slow.
And the bump doesn't quite get him onto the point. I was hoping to get into a range 3 of Toad to then attack to place off it, but I'm honestly about a millimetre out. Yeah, I've had a really good round, but at the end of the round it's still 8-all because Iron Fist can't quite get onto the point.
Because he can't quite get onto the point. So Blade's got that side point. You've got the 2 hammers at that side.
Yeah.
You've got Apocalypse, who's moved over to the other side where all the fighting, all the death seems to have happened. He's got 2 points.
So sorry, Toad is holding a hammer. So he has 3 hammers.
He has
3 hammers, and I have 1, and then I have 3 riots and only 1 hammer.
That makes a lot more sense, yeah. Because I was going to say, where are his models to be like contesting these riots because they're all dead?
So at the top of round 3, Hela gets KO'd. So annoyingly, Hela doesn't have enough tokens to survive again, so she's only got 4 health. I think she only has 1 or 2 tokens.
And I assume you've dazed all these characters out of activation, so you've handed priority over as well.
Yeah. He already had priority, and then I just exacerbated it. So Hela goes down pretty early, which is a bit of a shame. And then Werewolf goes, and he's one-off KOing Psylocke. I think again, the weight of the rerolls that he has means that her defense is
Psylocke's
really,
rerolls
really
plus the
good.
tokens.
Yeah, I think also he braces the pounce from Werewolf. So
nice.
Yeah, Psylocke alive on 1, which is a bit of a scunner. Iron Fist has, at this stage, accrued a bunch of power just because he's been punched a little bit. So he activates Blob. So my thinking is with this is, yes, I'm giving up priority, but basically it's just Blob on that side of the table and my 2 characters. So if I can activate Blob, I can stop him from pushing my characters off. And because he's injured, I just need one of my characters to be on that point. So Blob gets activated. Iron Fist is on that point. I don't KO him, which, given that I'm rolling 9 energy against his 2, is not beyond the realms of possibility. But I don't KO him. He's activated, and it leaves Blade to move and get on my back point, because at this stage, I'm now starting to get the hang of Midnight Suns. And one thing that's really good about them is they're very fast at pivoting, and Wong with 1 power can get to any of the objectives because of the bump. So I've basically moved Blade back onto my home objective. I've moved Wong over to the far away objective after Toad has run to the right objective. So we're doing this dance. A lot of our characters are not actually making that many attacks, but they're just moving around the board. Unfortunately though, Beast in the end throws Blade off my back point. So in the end, Aaron sneaks a little lead in this round, 11-12. So that the kind of tie is broken, but there's not been too much damage apart from that kind of early damage between Hela and Psylocke.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you've taken a lot of damage except losing Hela. You've lost Hela. She had the extract. Fair enough. He's put all his eggs in that basket, but he's not. Aaron's not leveraging Apocalypse to get lots of attacks off. He seems to be moving him around the board to be a bit of a stone giant.
Apocalypse actually has been pretty underwhelming himself. Apart from holding 2 hammers, he's not actually done a huge amount. I think his attacks have just not really popped off. I think Aaron has had some really unfortunate dice rolls with Apocalypse's big attacks.
Right.
That has kept me alive and kicking. And Werewolf is actually relatively tanky. Okay, actually, that's a lie. Apocalypse has not attacked Werewolf, which has allowed him to be tanky. I was worried that Aaron was going to punch Werewolf with Apocalypse. 2 Mystic defense against his 9 Mystic attack. That could go south very quickly.
yeah, there's been opportunities where I feel like Aaron could have leveraged that. But we're at the end of turn 3 and he's got a points lead, so he can't be doing it all bad.
So now at the top of round 4, Aaron has an interesting play. So Toad is holding an objective, but he's right next to Werewolf. And I think Aaron is very nervous about Werewolf just dazing Toad and getting rid of another healthy character, because he's only down to 2 healthy characters. And also, Psylocke is very close to death. So I think he's worried about his characters just getting killed by Werewolf and then him struggling. So what he does is he plays one of the Apocalypse cards, which I can't remember the name of, where he essentially places Toad off Apocalypse. In doing so...
It's a superpower on Apocalypse.
Oh, is it a superpower?
Yeah, characters in range 5 can then, in the power phase,
it's in the power,
place off of him range 1.
But they drop objective tokens.
Yeah.
That means that Toad drops his objective token next to Werewolf. And at this stage, I think it's my priority. So I pick up the hammer with Werewolf. Psylocke at this stage has kind of moved a little bit towards her back objective. So Werewolf hits Psylocke, who's got 1 health left, actually whiffs the first attack with 8 dice, gets her on the second attack, gets the place off. The place happens before damage, so he places off Psylocke. Then he pounces into range of the back objective. So now Werewolf is quite far away from everyone and is scoring me 3 VPs. So that was my priority, getting Werewolf away from Apocalypse. Because Apocalypse with 4 hammers, there's not much I can do.
Yeah.
Beast then throws Blade again, who gets back onto the point because of the bump, and he's got a range 4 attack. So actually, the throw didn't do very much. I think he was just trying to stall his activations out. I don't quite KO Beast with Blade, but Blade is on the point. And there's a little bit going on between Iron Fist and Blob, but essentially Iron Fist is able to activate later than Blob, which means that Iron Fist can sit on the point and score that point over Blob. And then the final activation of the round. So Wong is my last activation. This is the last activation of the round. Wong is on the same point as Werewolf. His Toad is on the right. His Apocalypse has come back to support Beast so that they're tying that one. So I go with Wong, and I have a decision to make. Either I go on to the point where Apocalypse is to win the point, but then give up the point that Toad's on, or I go to the right and I go on the same one as Toad. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm planning for this next round. Where do I want Wong? I decided to go and stand Wong next to Toad. I don't want Wong just getting punched by Apocalypse because that's scary. So I deny him the VP. We count up the VPs and it's 15-14 to me. So if I had moved Wong onto my home objective and stood next to Apocalypse, I win the game.
Oh no.
So I've made a big boo-boo here.
Oh no! Oh gosh, are you gonna come to regret this?
It was one of those moments where, and it's so close. It's 15-14. I felt that's something that will stick with me, and will hopefully be a learning curve to remember to at least count up the points, because I was kind of counting up points, but I was doing it not based on the score. I was basing it on like where I wanted characters.
And thinking about, right, where do I want to be going into next rounds when you could have just ended it there?
So we're going another round, and Blade is dazed by Beast. But
strong.
So Blade has taken all but 1 damage at this stage, and Beast has to pull out absolutely all the stops to daze him. Like, it's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, that's so frustrating.
Is Beast War, which is the one where you get...
Is that the one where you get the additional dice if they're injured?
No, if you roll crits and wilds, you get extra hits. And ultimately what got Blade was the fact that he could do that twice, because the first attack whiffed. I think I used bats, I used brace, I did everything I could to keep Blade alive. But unfortunately, Blade does eventually go down, which, he should have done. Like, there's no doubt that he should have done. Which means that point is pretty hard to get. And then Blob spikes into Iron Fist and dazes him.
Amazing. Love to hear it.
Blob is a real pain, because he can push people off, and if you attack him, he can push you away. I think Blob does his spender and spikes into Iron Fist, because Iron Fist is fully healthy at this stage.
It's a nice spender as well, because it comes with a place. He can push other characters as well and damage them.
Exactly. So that's a shame. But fortunately for me, Werewolf, who's been sat on the home point, is able to move onto, just double move and bump onto Blob's point, win that point, and Wong is able to pivot to wherever Toad isn't. So Toad tries to daze Wong. Wong says no. Wong moves to wherever Toad isn't, and I managed to squeak out a 1918 win.
Oh, you did well to keep that 1 point lead going into that final round, especially when it all could have been over much sooner. So, well, congratulations, you got yourself the win.
Yeah.
I mean, early game, despite the score being level, it sounded like you had a really strong attrition lead. I mean, maybe that's to be expected because, you're playing Siege of Darkness early doors, so you're getting, far more attacks than your opponent. But I felt like you were getting even more attacks because the way Aaron was playing a little bit cagey with his big damage piece in Apocalypse.
Yeah, I think actually the benefit... Yeah, the kind of attrition game really helped me long term because it meant that I could contest. I could basically go 1-on-1 with characters and I win the point because they're dazed and they're injured and I'm not. That was probably ultimately what won. I do think that Aaron probably made a mistake by dropping Toad's hammer. I think he should have just risked it with Toad because I think it then gifted me not only Werewolf being able to pick up another hammer, but also allowed Werewolf to run away from Apocalypse, whereas I wouldn't have been able to do that. So even if I dazed Toad, Apocalypse can then punch Werewolf, and the likelihood is that he kills him. Yeah. So I think I got away with that one.
Yeah, I feel like Hela could have gone down a turn sooner as well, if instead of going in with just two characters, just taking Apocalypse over to that point. Yeah. And putting an attack in, putting a condition on her early, so then when Beast and Psylocke are attacking her, she's already sort of a bit weak. So top of turn 2, she can get taken off the table.
Yeah, I think actually going down round 1 she was far enough away that I think Apocalypse would have struggled to really get to her without being completely out of position and giving me quite a significant points lead.
Even with, because he's got that range 2 place, plus a medium move on a large base, and then he just needs to be in range 3.
Yeah, maybe. I think that wasn't really on the radar. I don't know if terrain was in the way or something as well.
Sure, maybe.
I think basically the difference was that Apocalypse's attacks didn't do enough for Aaron. For me, Werewolf was brilliant because he basically held down that one side where Hela had fluffed it, and then was able to steal hammers, KO Psylocke, and run. And because he's so fast, he can just get around the board. He can be wherever you need him to be. And when he's holding 2 hammers and he's healthy, he's scoring 3 VPs in those final 2 rounds. Like, that final round didn't go particularly well for me in terms of the dazes and KOs. Blade got dazed and Iron Fist got dazed. But because it was Werewolf that was holding all my objectives. And I have to say, Wong is brilliant on these shapes, not because he does all his healing and giving out power stuff, but because he can move and bump.
Yeah.
And he can get to whatever point, and for a 2 threat, that's just great.
And the fact that you're so wide on this map, he's not really at threat. The fight, it sounded like it was happening on both sides.
Yeah.
If he just sits on the back, he's living.
Yeah.
If I attack Wong, it's usually opportunistic. Right, I can take their back point from them with a character that can reach. But because on the D map, he sits at the back, scoring that, he's never in range, or he's never it's never an appealing target to chase. Your action economy is just not good enough to chase him down. And the fact that then you could get out and dodge if the fight ever started getting towards that back point. You talk about Blade and Beast working towards the back, and you've just double moved and bumped and got onto an empty back point on your opponent's side of the table.
Exactly.
He's just hanging out on the battlefield, ducking and dodging, keeping out of the way, scoring points.
And he's affiliated, so that helps as well.
Yeah, it helps your conscious as well for bringing it to the table.
Well,
anyway, well done. 1 win. Fantastic. Great start. A good one for the roster. Should we call that one and then move into round 2?
Let's do it.
So that's 1 win on the boards, and we move into round 2. Who's your opponent, and what are they bringing along?
So I face up round 2 against Ron Wild. So he's a local London guy. I've been on nations with him. I've been to plenty of tournaments. I've been to game nights, and I've never played him.
Wow.
So this is my first time I'm playing against Ron.
Incredible. Yeah, I can't believe ships in the night, you two.
I know, exactly.
This is a good chance. And he's a great player. He's smashed me into the ground a few times. So yeah. What has he brought to the table?
So he's bringing Sam Avengers.
Nice.
And he is no other Avengers leader because he said to me after the game he wants to just try and play Sam.
Force himself into playing Sam, practice Sam. Nice.
And we roll priority and I lose priority. You'll see that this is a theme of the day. And so he goes for his secures.
Classic MCP.
We draw Mayor Fisk and Cosmic Cubes.
Okay, so another secure that's not in your roster.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So what's your thinking?
So this is interesting because I know we talked about at the start about the lack of Immortal Hulk in this roster.
Yep.
And we draw this one and I'm thinking Immortal Hulk could be really good at this.
Yeah, he enjoys a bit of Mayor Fist, doesn't he?
But it gives me the opportunity to try something else. So I decide to go 17.
Of course. I imagine he's got a very good 16. If he's brought Mayor Fisk, he's probably got the Hulk.
Yeah, he's got a Hulk, and that's basically what I don't want a 16 threat where I'm having to go 4 wide and he's able to go 4 wide with a Hulk.
Yeah.
So we go
that makes
17.
sense.
And my 17 is Blade, Iron Fist, Encantu the Living Mummy. So he's getting a run out.
Glad to see him on the table.
Ghost Rider. So I replace Werewolf with Ghost Rider this time.
Great. So putting into practice what you're talking about, building these teams around your 5 threats.
Yeah. And he's back for more. He's everyone's favourite. He's Wong.
Of course
to finish
it
off
is, yeah. You got a nice 15 there. What would make it better at 17? Wong.
Yeah. So my thinking with this is that Ghost Rider on Mayor Fisk doesn't care about the stun as much. That's essentially the difference between him and Werewolf at this.
He's got lots of ways to generate power, doesn't he?
Exactly.
Is he even stun? Is he stun immune, or is it just because he's gaining power lots of ways?
No, he's not stun immune, but because every time that someone attacks one of my allies and deals damage, he gains a power. So he gains power super easily.
Okay.
His 17 is Sam, Deadpool, Namor,
Right.
and
Nice.
then of course Hulk. So he goes 4 wide to my 5. So I go into this game and I'm thinking I've got my training wheels on, right? I'm thinking, can this team take out a Hulk in a quick enough time for me to win a game like this? So that's how I decide to approach this. I decide, let's kill Hulk. And actually, this is quite a good team to do this into because killing the smaller characters is good for Ron because of the Sam leadership. So actually, if I can stop his Sam leadership, then suddenly his Hulk is not wandering around the board.
And often how the Sam leadership is played when you do bring Hulk is that you use it as a bit of a mechanism to move the Hulk around the table. Like he's the one that takes the heal and the move, etc. When the other characters go down. But if you focus everything into the Hulk, like A, he only dazes / KOs once,
Yep.
and B, no one else is getting dazed, so no one else is moving around the table.
Exactly. So round 1 kicks off. Ron has priority, and I'm thinking, okay, I can't go up to the middle of the board because there's a Hulk on one side, there's a Namor on another. So I sit back. Unfortunately, he grabs the center. Namor has his safe grab.
Of course, classic safe grab, yeah.
And he then actually sits Namor onto my right hand Fisk, but he's sat behind this size 3 piece of terrain, so I actually can't see him unless I'm dead close to him or at a weird angle.
Right, okay.
So Namor's pretty safe. And then I grab my 2 home cubes. He grabs his 2 home cubes. And he then moves Deadpool up onto the same Fisk as Namor. And then his Hulk goes on to the left Fisk and throws one of my characters that has moved up. And so at the end of the round, there's no attacks, I don't think. But basically I just move and I contest the one with Hulk. So at the end of the round, Ron has taken a bit of a points lead and has gone 5-2 up.
Strong.
I should say the other thing that happened is that when Hulk, it was Iron Fist that moved up onto the Fisk first, and Hulk actually managed to get 1 attack off onto Iron Fist, and I think did 3 damage.
Perfect amount. If he's Gamma-let to do that,
Yeah.
perfect amount to then get the throw off.
Yeah, I think by the end of that round, Iron Fist taken 3, whether that was from an attack and a throw or just an attack, I can't remember.
Sure.
But he's off the point as well. So he has priority, he goes with Namor, and Namor completely whiffs.
I love to hear it.
Completely whiffs. I mean, I've played enough Namor with and against that I know this happens. And so Namor doesn't get any staggers off. But crucially, he's out of sacrifice range or Prince's protection range of Hulk. And Iron Fist at this stage, because he's taken some damage, has enough power to do his Iron Fist attack.
Already?
Yes, so he gains 2 power in the power phase. He then took 3 damage from
he's done
Hulk.
that twice.
So that's 5. Then he has 2 more, so that's 7. And then he does his range 3 gainer to get to 8.
Oh, he's got a gainer.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that about Iron Fist. So yeah, he set himself up perfectly.
And so I fist the Hulk. Round 2, Hulk is not going.
Wow, that's huge because he is built for Mayor Fisk with his displacement,
Yeah.
his stun immunity, his massive base. yeah, to then just completely remove a 6 threats activation is massive.
Yeah, and there's some chip damage that goes around with that as well. I don't do loads of damage to Hulk, but I'm now going like ham into Hulk this round. So I do a whole bunch of attacks into Hulk.
You've been given a free pass, now he's not going to go.
Exactly, so I get a decent chunk of damage off this round. Iron Fist has still been tanking a bunch of stuff, but the final thing that happens this round is that Blade goes, and Blade attacks Deadpool, double taps Deadpool, and Deadpool is alive on 1. And Deadpool is not only on the Mayor Fisk, but he's also holding a cube. This is when I pop the siege, and unfortunately I whiff the attack with Blade, and Deadpool survives on 1. So, despite having a great turn where Hulk has not done anything, Ron has still got the advantage, and he is 8-4 up.
I'm surprised you've popped Siege then. I thought you might have used it to try and get your whole team doing attacks into the Hulk.
Yes, so I did get a bunch of attacks into Hulk with the Siege.
Okay, so he's got a chunk of damage on him.
Yeah, I decided to do this with Blade because that was my thinking. But then I saw this opportunity with Blade. There was enough characters. I think there were 2 characters that could do an attack into Hulk, including Ghost Rider. And I was like, right, let's do it now. Because if I daze Deadpool, I will score that Fisk and I will be holding a cube. And that flips the score quite significantly.
Right, of course, yes.
As it is, Deadpool survives, takes the 1 damage needed in the cleanup phase because of the cube damage. So Deadpool does get dazed. But interestingly, it means that they can't use the Sam leadership because it's only enemy effects.
Oh, because it's not from an enemy effect.
So at the end of round 2, I've still not dazed anyone, and I have not been dazed either. But what it means is that Sam has never had his leadership go off.
Right.
And Hulk has taken a bunch of damage. So at the moment, despite the score, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah. And he's just lost an instance of getting that trigger.
Exactly. So at the top of the round, I go with Blade and I KO Deadpool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive because he's got decent Mystic Defense plus a reroll. He's got more health on this side.
Yeah. So I have my 5 Mystic builder. I then get my Spender, and that's the one that does him.
And did you bleed him?
Bled him. In fact, I had enough power to do my Spender immediately because Blade is holding a cube. But I did my attack first to get the bleed, and then I Spender him. So the Spender really does the job on this occasion. Deadpool is off the table. Blade picks up 2 cubes and is sat on the Mayor Fisk. So all of a sudden, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good on that side. Basically, it was Blade and Deadpool on that side, and everyone else was on the other side. So then Namor goes, and Namor whiffs again. It was really pretty painful. In fact, it was really painful because what happens is, so Namor went first, charged into Ghost Rider to try and stagger him. I heroes for hire with Iron Fist, who's only got 1 health left. I'm thinking just take the hit with Iron Fist. Iron Fist goes down, but at least my big 5 so it's not staggered. Iron Fist survives, throws Namor away.
Oh, no.
And so Namor is now not on a point.
I'm sorry, actually, all I'm hearing is Apocalypse whiffed, and then Namor whiffed, and then Hulk didn't get to go.
Namor whiffing was pretty brutal for Ron, but this is what Namor does. I've had plenty of games with him that he just does this because he's so reliant on that 6 dice if he gets the damage through.
Yeah, and 6 dice with MCP dice is not that reliable even.
Exactly. And then one of my favourite moments in this round was Ron then goes with Sam. He's fed up with Iron Fist, and Sam pops off against Iron Fist and rolls 3 crits off 4 dice. Dazes Iron Fist, who's only got 1 health left, and Ghost Rider does his crit thing and dazes Sam.
Oh, gosh. Oh, it's getting from bad to worse.
It was absolutely savage. I was like, okay, because I'd done this, I think I'd done this the previous round to Sam, so Sam had taken 2 damage, and then he just popped off, and I was like, that's the perfect time for him to pop off.
Yeah.
You know, Iron Fist has exceeded all expectations.
Mid-activation as well.
That was 1 attack that he got in.
Oh,
so it meant that Sam goes down, he's not on a point, he's dazed, and it's just Hulk left to activate. And Hulk, again, been taking a bunch of damage from my attacks. Like, Encanto is basically sitting at the back just pinging these 6 dice mystics into Hulk, which are doing reasonable work. Nice. But as Hulk gets angrier and angrier, he then goes and he one-shots Ghost Rider. It's pretty savage. This is where Ron's dice show up. He does his, like, I think it's 12 dice, but he does 7 damage through on Ghost Rider and gets the throw, so he dazes Ghost Rider from full.
Lovely.
But I feel like, you know, I've been getting the rub of the green a bit in some of these attacks, so I'll take that. But at the end of the round, I've managed to close the gap, and it is 9-10 to Ron. So most of my points have come from Blade.
Yeah, of course.
Blade is scoring me 4 points.
That's huge. And so Ron this turn has only scored 2.
Yeah.
Whereas you've jumped. Well, you've got all the points from Blade. So fantastic.
So then I should have said at the end of the round, Wong walks up to Hulk and does 1 damage to him.
Just helping out.
Which actually means that after cube damage, Hulk has got 1 health left.
Where's priority at this stage?
Ron has priority. But I was thinking, right, Wong can contest the thing with Hulk, so we're evens on that. And if Wong gets 2 damage through, Hulk goes. And that's the result. Yeah. So Wong is now stood right next to Hulk. Hulk activates, and Hulk does it again to Ghost Rider, and he KOs Ghost Rider. We were kind of talking this through at the time, and Ron was like, I really want to go after your 3 threats, but if I roll a single crit off 12 dice, Ghost Rider will KO Hulk. So he goes after Ghost Rider, does his spender again, KOs Ghost Rider, but Ghost Rider's made a deal with the devil.
Of course he has.
And he sacrifices Wong to come back right next to Hulk.
Healthy as well.
Incinerates everyone. Healthy, unactivated. Now Hulk one-shots Ghost Rider, so he's got another attack into him. And he's like, I've got to go into for exactly the same reason, I've got to go into Ghost Rider again. And he goes into Ghost Rider and he spikes again. Would have dazed Ghost Rider, but I use Bats the Ghost Hound and Brace to survive.
Right, okay.
So Ghost Rider is alive on 1, and Hulk is done. Hulk has used all his powers, so he can't do his superpower throw. But this was huge for me because Hulk has had to take his full activation just to try and deal with Ghost Rider, and he's not dealt with him. I was so impressed by Ghost Rider's crit thing on this. It's such an effective way of dealing with these characters, especially when they're low on health, because he just didn't have an alternative, because if he punches anyone else, he probably dies.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible superpower. It always catches me. Whenever I face Ghost Rider, I only want to put my attacks into Ghost Rider because he can't do it when attacks are going into him. It's only on allied characters. But it means then you've got to deal with Ghost Rider, and he's a big nasty 5 threat.
Yeah. And Iron Fist then gets his second Iron Fist attack off of the game, and he Iron Fists Namor. So Namor is now activated.
Yeah, I suppose you've got all the time in the world to deal with Hulk's one
Exactly. So Iron Fist fists Namor. This is the best bit because he does a range 3, 1 chip of damage to everyone within range 3. He KOs Hulk with that attack.
So you've done both. Yeah.
So I've done both, and that's why I did it. And actually, I think I dazed Namor in the attack. Like Namor had taken a little bit of chip damage from cubes, and I spike a little bit on that attack. And at this stage, Ron is relying on Sam to have an enormous activation because I still have Mummy, I still have Blade, and I still have Ghost Rider to go. All of who have taken a reasonable amount of damage, but Sam just can't do it all.
Yeah.
So Sam ends up dazing Blade, picking up both of his cubes, but because Ghost Rider is healthy, he can just go and stand on the point next to Sam. He picks up a cube that's been dropped somewhere else, and I'm able to score out at the end of this round 16-12.
Yeah, and even if you hadn't reached 16, it feels like the game state was in such a place that it would be difficult for Ron to come back at that stage. So even though you had such a massive points lead, he was 8-4 up at the end of round 2, because the level of attrition that you've done and the lack of actions. This is it. Your game plan has always been about reducing your opponent's action economy, whether that's by attacking and running away and forcing them to move, or in this instance using Ghost Rider to daze characters out of activation with the crits, or using Iron Fist. Iron Fist seems to have played a huge role in this game with his big old punch.
Iron Fist was enormous because he was taking hits a lot and he was able to survive a lot. And this is actually something that I hadn't thought about before, but after the game, I always thought about Ghost Rider on a wider map because he's so fast. But on this map, he was so good because he's very good at protecting your threes, because he takes the attacks himself and he's got a decent chunk of health. And then you can also Heroes for Hire and sacrifice if you need him to survive.
Well, force those superpowers to happen.
Yeah, he was able to keep Iron Fist alive, and it meant that Iron Fist got 2 of his Iron Fist attacks off in the game, and 1 against a 6, 1 against a 5 threat. So he has done far more work than he should have done. I should say Namor was dreadful for Ron this game. Hulk, it was an interesting one because I think my game plan was sound with Hulk, but actually Hulk managed to get 2 huge activations back to back when he had 1 health left. Like, Hulk actually, I think in the end did a lot of work, but it was just early game that I was able to deal with him very well. And I could have got lucky with the Wong attack and done 1 more damage to Hulk, and then Hulk would have been KO'd 1 turn earlier, and it had been game 1 turn earlier.
Yeah.
But as it was, the fact that Namor was not staggering people was really influential. Having said that, that was part of the reason I took Wong, was because I saw that he had Namor and Shang-Chi, so I didn't have to remove staggers, but I had that option.
You wanted him to clean them up, yep. Well done. It sounds like your game plan worked, even if you didn't take out Hulk until the very end. It felt like you were doing enough by focusing on those taller pieces that you were then able to out-survive them and then see the game out on points in the end. So
exactly.
Well played.
And there was enough chip damage there that actually I dealt with Sam without making an attack into him.
Well done. And yeah, the lack of leadership as well hurt. Yeah. And you know what condition you can't take away with the leadership? An activated token. So Iron Fist is doubly good into these tall Sam lists. Obviously the wider ones, it's less impactful. But when there's a 5 threat who sometimes can operate like a 6 threat if he has a good turn, and a 6 threat who can win games on his own, you can deal with them pretty well. So congrats.
So it was great because didn't need a Mortal Hulk.
Who needs a Mortal Hulk?
Who needs a Mortal Hulk on Mayor Fisk? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well done. That's 2 wins.
Yep.
Should we go into game 3?
Yeah, let's do it.
So hopefully you've refueled after lunch. You've reflected on those 2 games. Sounds like it's all going hunky dory for you, Archie. Round 3. Who are you facing, and what are they bringing?
So 2-0, so I'm at the top tables, and I'm facing against a kindred spirit of mine in Tom Brown.
Oh, fantastic!
And he's a kindred spirit of mine because he's a massive Spider Foes fan. And so we chat a lot about Spider Foes. And actually at the Weekender, the last time we played in a competitive sense, he had Spider Foes and he actually played Kingpin against me. So I felt so betrayed when I played against him. So this time it was definitely Spider Foes. He didn't have the option to go Kingpin. So we were joking about that at the start. So we roll priority. I lose priority.
3 out of 3.
He goes with his secures.
Yep, MCP.
And we draw hammers and spider portals.
Nice, okay.
So actually, spider portals is in my list. Although I got a lot of confusion about why spider portals is in my list, which I find funny because I really like it in there. But, to each their own.
Yeah, fair. People, I think the more people are raising their eyebrows at choices you've made, and if you know what your plan is, it often goes in your favour.
Yeah. So we have to go with 18. I don't have a choice this time.
Of course.
So I go with Blade. I go with Ghost Rider again. So Ghost Rider in for Werewolf because of the pay to flip is my thinking. Ghost Rider's better at generating the power.
With that long move superpower and flipping, he's always got tons of power, hasn't he? So
we have Black Panther, Chosen of Bast, and he comes in for the pay to flip as well.
Yep, excellent.
We have Hela coming back again, despite me losing priority. Same reason as before with the hammers.
You wanted her to threaten the hammer that they might not want to grab.
Yep. And then 3 out of 3. Wong's back, baby.
Of course. Yep.
Nothing wrong with that.
MVP.
And Tom's Spider Foes list, it's kind of one that, I like. It's pretty solid for this map. So he's got Doc Ock, Sinister Scientist. He's got Rhino. And he's got Lizard. And then he's got Amazing Spider-Man. And he's got Toad. So a pretty kind of solid, standard, pay-to-flip Spider Foes list.
Did Tom talk to you about why he wanted pay to flips with these Spider Foes characters?
So part of the reason, which I agree with, is ASM particularly is very good at pay to flips because he's fast, he rolls 4 dice in all the right places, and if he rolls a crit, he gets a power back.
Right.
And that's the same with Doc Ock. They're the 2 characters I think that are really good. And then Rhino is generically good, and he's good on pay to flips because he can place off people.
Right.
And then Toad and Lizard are similarly just kind of fast to run around. I think Lizard is probably the weaker one of the pay to flips one because his power generation is more limited.
Of course. But at least he's got characters there who've got good displacement as well, so they can move on to the point,
Exactly.
throw someone off it, make that roll far more likely.
Exactly. They're all fast. So I know I'm up against it because my thing is that I'm very fast. And his thing is he's very fast because he's got a lot of like medium base characters or large base short movers kind of thing.
Sure.
So round 1 kicks off. Tom activates his trap card, Sinister Traps.
Ooh.
And he puts the Sinister Traps on the right-hand hammer / portal. And that's where I've lined Hela up. He then goes, I'm actually on the same board as my first game against Aaron, and the setup is the same, and Toad does the same thing. So Toad grabs it behind the building, and Hela is like opposite the other one. So Toad grabs the left hammer, but that leaves Blade with the opportunity to go and flip the left portal because Toad isn't actually contesting it because he's not within 1, he's within 2.
Stayed within 2, yeah.
ASM then goes and flips it back, but ASM and Blade actually both roll the skull and get placed. So then Black Panther goes and flips it back.
Brilliant.
In the process, Black Panther does a couple of damage to ASM because Wong passed Black Panther a power, so it allowed him to move, bump onto the middle point, flip the middle point, and then punch ASM.
And ASM, does he not get his rerolls against mystic attacks?
He does, but he's only got 3 mystic defense, so he's a little weaker.
Okay. Nice.
I also put the bleed on him, though.
Great.
So I decide Hela's going to pivot, and rather than picking up and activating the trap, I move across and I pick up my home hammer with Hela, and then I move kind of into the middle of the board so that she's ready to go wherever she wants. And then Ghost Rider flips the home one and doesn't attack into ASM, but doesn't do much. So at the end of the round, it's 3 apiece. Tom has 2 hammers and his home portal, and I have 2 of the portals and my home hammer.
So you've completely ignored the trap.
Yeah.
And you've still kept score parity. That's
Yeah.
very good, very clever.
And his lizard is kind of hovering around the trap. Basically, I think he was hoping that I'd activate the trap, get pushed away, and then lizard would come and...
Yeah, lizard can mop up.
So then he still has priority. I think he goes with Toad and runs away in Toadish fashion. And I go with Hela, and this is where I decide I'm going to activate the trap. So I move medium to get as close as I can to the trap, but I also position myself in amongst some terrain. Hela takes 2 damage from the trap and doesn't really get pushed because of the terrain. She then walks towards Lizard with her short advance, does 2 damage to Lizard, and so heals 2. So she's taken no damage from the trap, has gained power, and has done some damage to Lizard. She then picks up the hammer, flips the point, and punches Lizard, and does a little bit more damage. So actually Hela, not planned, was really good into the trap because she was able to heal up afterwards. So she's now holding 2 hammers and is just up against Lizard. So I'm feeling pretty good about Hela's position.
Yeah.
However, when she flips the portal, she does get placed. So she kind of gets placed more towards his people. And then he goes with Lizard and pushes her closer to them. Fortunately for me, there's quite a big terrain piece in the way. So she actually is hidden enough behind this terrain piece that she can't be seen by his folks. So they're not able to double tap her, which is lucky because she's holding my VPs. So that's what happens on the right-hand side. I then move Ghost Rider and I move on to his back point and I flip his back point and I keep Ghost Rider in sacrifice range of Hela. So it basically means that I'm trying to just like keep Hela alive this round and try and score those VPs. Blade goes, ASM then goes and flips my point, and then Black Panther goes. He gets 1 off dazing ASM. He then has 2 power. He spends 1 power to try and flip the point, fails, doesn't get any successes. I use the superpower, which I very rarely use, Insight of the Ancients, or something like that, which allows him to re-roll any number, including skulls. He fails again and gets placed.
Yeah.
So actually, I think from like an odds perspective, that's a pretty good play for me because if I get 1 success off 3 dice, I can then re-roll 2 dice and need 1 success off 2 dice. So,
yeah,
I think that's right. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite happen for me. And at the end of the round, it's 7-all. So that's a shame because that would have put me up 8-6 if that had come off.
Yes.
But I'm still level. Round 3 kicks off, and with sacrifice, Hela survives on 1 against Rhino. So I get very lucky.
Oof.
Rhino also cannot rob her because he is holding a hammer, and suddenly robbery is 5 power, not 4.
Of course, the hammer tax. Yeah, well remembered. Everyone forgets that.
Exactly. So then I go and I siege and I daze ASM with Blade, and I think it's actually only just Black Panther that dazes him. I think Blade spends his 2 power but doesn't need it. But I take out ASM, and then Ghost Rider spikes into Doc Ock and dazes Doc Ock.
Wow, good. Strong siege turn.
A huge siege, and at this point I haven't chosen who I'm going to activate because I don't have to.
Nice.
So then I go with Hela, and I do a similar play pattern to what I've done before. I move, because she's only 1 off, and she's got 2 hammers. So Rhino has, off the sacrifice, placed back on the spider portal, on his home spider portal. I go with Hela. I walk towards Rhino, but then does a couple of attacks into Rhino, and does, I think, 5 out of 7 damage to him. So she's done pretty well. So,
he doesn't like Mystic, does he? I mean, he can pretty much tank anything, but Mystic is where he struggles.
And he's bleeding at this stage. So I've had a really good turn because I've dazed Doc Ock, which I didn't expect to be honest. I dazed ASM, which is really why I did the siege. And then Hela's had a good go at Rhino. Tom then does a really smart play. So he ran Toad early into the corner just to hold a point. So he held a hammer. So it was very difficult for me to chase him down. But also Toad could move back in, because he's gaining power, move back in to kind of influence the game later. And what he does is he moves Toad so he's along his back point, but within 3 of Rhino, so that when I next attack Rhino, he has strategic retreat online. So this is this Spider Foes card, which is a combination of fallback and mission objective. So what his plan is that he can pass 1 hammer from Rhino to Toad, and then Toad is suddenly holding 2 hammers, and Toad can then run away. So it's a really nice play that really neuters what I can do, because I don't want... It is imperative that Toad does not have 2 hammers, because that is a disaster for me. I then have to decide, okay, I've got to attack Toad. So I attack Toad and he's alive on 1. This is with Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider has 1 attack into Toad. Toad is alive on 1. Toad's slippery so that he's out of range 3 of Ghost Rider, but in range 3 of Rhino. And so all Ghost Rider can do is move onto the point that Rhino's on and attempt to flip it, and he fails to flip it. So this Toad is really annoying.
Yeah.
So I actually decide I've got to ignore Rhino because, like I said, I can't give Toad, and he's going to get priority. I can't give Toad 2 hammers. So I put all my eggs in the basket of trying to flip his home objective, and it takes me almost everyone. Blade is finally the one that steps up. His 3 energy defense steps up, flips that point. But it means that basically most of my characters, and his characters, to be fair, are all clumped.
On that back home.
And I'm sure you haven't forgotten that Wong is still kicking around. His lizard moves to flip my home point. Wong follows him and flips it back.
Flips it back. With 3 dice as well. That's pretty good.
So my 3 dice are stepping up. The ones that are not designed to do these pay to flips are stepping up. So it's a good round for me because I have all 4 of the portals and I have 2 hammers. So I'm 12-9 up.
Wow.
But it's the portals that are big because suddenly it means that Tom is having to chase down the portals.
And you've got them flipped in your favour, and
exactly
very few, apart from Lizard on the back point, everyone seems to be clumped up or dazed out on the wings.
Exactly. So it was a really good turn for me. But at the top of round 4, Rhino goes. Rhino's got a decent amount of power now. So he robs Hela. Hela's holding 2 hammers, but he's only on 1 health. Robs Hela, throws her away. He picks up the hammers, spikes into Ghost Rider, dazes Ghost Rider from full, which is pretty huge. Hela survives. Miraculously survives. And this is huge for me because Hela survives on 1, walks towards Toad, does her short advance towards Toad, and pops him because Toad has 1 health left.
Excellent.
Picks up his hammer, and then she punches Rhino with a 6-dicer. I'm thinking I've got rid of the strategic retreat, but Rhino actually passes one of his hammers to Doc Ock. So he does strategic retreat, he survives on 1, and instead of double tapping him, I decide actually to move away with Hela to just try and get away because she's only got 1 health left. Try and keep her away. Try and have it so that Tom's got to make some choices. So yeah, the board state is that Rhino has 2 hammers and Doc Ock has 1. But Doc Ock then goes and doesn't actually do a huge amount. He's not got a huge amount to do. He could have run away, but if he runs away, then my other 2 characters, Blade and Black Panther, who are both there, can happily just follow him. So he decides to attack them, and I think he attacks Blade, and Blade survives, and then Blade dazes Rhino with his Mystic.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, he was fairly fragile at that point, right? You know,
he's
only got a couple of health left from the Hela attacks, so you'd hope Blade could take him out.
Exactly. And then he picks up 2 hammers and runs away. So suddenly I've got Hela on one kind of... They're both on Tom's back point. And I've actually, to do my Hela activation, I had to come all the way around the tables because it was so far towards that end. So Hela is kind of on one side, Blade is on the other, scoring me 3 VPs, and he's got ASM left, and ASM fails today's Blade. And I think with that, I've managed to keep Blade out of range 2 of anyone else, so ASM's momentum can't go off. So it means that ASM can't flip points or get hammers. Lizard then flips 2 points, and Wong flips one of them back. And that rounds out the game. And I end up actually winning the game 20 points to 10.
Wow. So you scored 8 points in that round. I assume you've got all 4 hammers at that stage.
Yes, I can't quite remember. Maybe I had all 4 hammers in the end. But yeah, the score slightly blows out. And I think it's a disservice to how close a game it was for Tom. It felt like it came down to if Hela hadn't survived there, when Ghost Rider had gone down, it could have swung. But it was really, to be honest, what set me up was the siege turn. Yeah. Being able to do that without activating any of my characters so I could see what the board state is. Taking out ASM. Blade and Black Panther were brilliant at dealing with ASM.
I think being able to capitalize on siege and score points from it, give yourself that points lead, meant that Tom was going into that second round chasing. Yeah. And he will then probably have priority. He will do an activation which is chasing, and he's relying on it to do well. And if it doesn't do well, you can ignore that character and then move on to another one of the characters to try and stop that. Yeah. And I think it sounds like it just exacerbated the points lead that you'd accumulated from all the damage, all the effectiveness from that siege turn. Yeah. Particularly with the pay to flips, meaning that you didn't need to commit models to those points. Yeah. Once they'd flipped it, they were moving, and your team is very good at that with the bump, with their sort of inbuilt movement from their attacks, etc. Yeah, they're very fast to be able to pivot. So yeah, and actually doing so much damage and keeping Tom with priority meant that you were probably always flipping last. Yeah, which gave you just that little bit of edge on the spider portals to keep the score in your favour.
And one thing I would say is, again, Wong was fantastic. So I've often found that Wong doesn't have much power because he often passes it off to people. Yeah. But in this game, I decided let's try and keep 2 power on Wong every turn, because then he can flip. He can flip and bump. He can double move and bump to get onto a point. So he can get onto pretty much any point, and then he can flip. And because he's got 3 energy defense, if he's flipping an uncontested one, which was largely what he was doing, he's likely to flip it. And he's just this 2 threat that's a pain. I feel like I've used Wong in those 2 games quite similarly to Toad, and Toad would probably be better in most instances, but I think in Midnight Suns, the ability of Wong to be able to come in and keep you affiliated is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
And he's good at doing the other stuff that he's actually normally good at doing as well.
Yeah, exactly. And normally a Wong activation late game is... you either want to do it early to give you, as almost like a pseudo pass, or to get those heals off early, or you don't want to do it at all because it's not going to do anything. Whereas in this game, it doesn't really matter when you do it, but it can go right at the beginning and do exactly that, or like force your opponent to have to chase him. Yeah. Or it can go last and you flip those points. Actually, on the pay to flips, he seems like a really good choice, especially when you're keeping that 2 power on him and the mobility he gains from the bump.
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's a pretty heavy win. Your wins are getting bigger as we go along. I'm expecting a real drumming in this final round. But you're 3-0.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty surprised.
A 4-game challenger event. I got the long shanks up, and there were 3 players on 3-0 at this point. Mm-hmm. You've got Angus, who's 3-0 of the Rapid Fire podcast. Yep. Also, like classic London B team player, top player. And then you've got the man himself, Pat Dunford. One of the best players of this game, all sat there at the top. How do you feel amongst that company? Well, pause there. I'm not going to let you answer. Yeah. Let's go into game 4 and let's see which one of those you came up against. So this is it. Potential championship round, unless you get the pair down. Do you face either of those 2? Which one? Who's opposite you?
So I'm 3-0. I'm feeling pretty pleased. I wanted to go positive at the end of this with my Midnight Suns.
Normally, either of us, if you're at this stage, you'd happily walk home, wouldn't you?
Exactly. But I'm not done. I've got one more game to go, and I do face Pat Dunford. So I get the top table clash.
Top table clash, and given that you're both on 3-0, Unfortunately, Angus then will get the pair down, but this means that the likely case is you two are playing for the tournament.
Yeah, and Pat, so to bookend my event, Pat is playing Apocalypse.
Ooh, excellent. He played Apocalypse at the first round, didn't he? And he went 4-0 at that. So so far, he is 7 games unbeaten.
Yeah, he's 7-0 in Train Wars. And actually, Angus, in fairness, is 6-1 on Train Wars. So they're both vying it out for that top spot.
And you're here to ruin the party.
I'm just here to be a buzzkill.
Well, if you remember, we said, haven't you got the place of Nick Cork?
Yeah.
The first Train Wars. So, like, you're also 7-0, technically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's what I told myself.
Anyway, so go on, talk me through it. You roll priority.
We roll priority, and guess what happens?
Did you win?
I lose priority.
You lost? No.
I lost priority.
That's all 4 games.
And Pat goes again with his secures. So I've not played my secures
70p.
once.
But who needs them? You're winning on your extracts.
So it's Cosmic Cubes, and it's Mutant Madmen.
You've played 4 different secures throughout the tournament. Yeah. But across the 4 games, you've only played 2 of your extracts. Yes. So which is the extract that you're missing that you've not played?
Montesi.
Who needs it?
Exactly.
Not enough points. Okay, cool.
So I go with 17. I really am an eye about this. I'm thinking, geez, I'm at the top table. What do I do here?
Yeah. I bet you're looking at Pat. He looks probably super calm.
Yeah,
he's been there many a times.
And I actually am like umming and ahhing about what to play, and I'm like, let's just go with what the plan is. Like, don't panic just because it's the final round. So I go with 17, and I go Blade. I got Iron Fist. Iron Fist is back for more.
Great.
Cantu the Living Mummy is back for more. Werewolf by Night is back again.
Right, okay. Ghost Rider, though, has had 2 cracking games.
Yeah.
But you felt like Werewolf needed the run out.
I think Werewolf needed the run out. I felt like he could do more on this. And also the pay to flip is worse for Ghost Rider. And all 5 games, we have to have Wong. So Wong comes out again.
So him and Blade have featured every single game, which is quite fun.
Exactly. And Pat goes quite similar to what the Apocalypse was round 1. He goes Apocalypse, Beast, Deadpool, The Blob, and Toad. So the only difference is Deadpool.
Oh, interesting. So he's not gone for any of the sort of 4 threats. He's trying to keep quite wide. He's gone for the 3s and Toad.
And his horsemen are slightly different, but I think Beast gets Pestilence Bomb.
Yeah, I like Beast as Pestilence.
I think Toad has Death.
Yep, Toad I feel like is a better Death.
And then Deadpool is War, and Blob is Famine.
Whatever's left, Famine.
Well, Blob needs Famine because he gets the place.
Yes, yeah, it makes him so much more mobile.
Yeah, I'm thinking, let's go for this one. So he has priority. His Toad goes and grabs the middle cube, unsurprisingly. Is able to kind of have this semi-safe grab. He's in cover. I'm not going to go near him, let's be realistic. It's kind of the way it's set up is I have Mummy and Iron Fist on the right, facing off against his Apocalypse and Beast. And on the left, I've got Wong, Werewolf, and Blade facing off against his Blob and Deadpool. So that's how I've kind of set it up. And I'm thinking if I can hang in there on the right-hand side with my 3s against Apocalypse, I should be able to dominate the left-hand side. That's kind of my logic with the setup. So it kind of is all going sort of picking up, flipping. And then Beast is actually super aggressive. And he is aggressive and comes and takes my back right cube after Iron Fist has flipped my point. So what I do is I then move with Mummy, and I hit Beast, and I get a decent roll, and I think I get 4 damage through on Beast. I push him, and I hex him.
Excellent.
So he's done really well. And then Apocalypse goes, and with the cover, Iron Fist is able to tank an Apocalypse attack. And in doing so, it means that Apocalypse can't pick up his home cube, nor can he flip the home point, because he's spent power to place himself up.
And he's not generated any off the attack.
So I get away with it. Iron Fist has tanked so much.
Yeah. A little aside, Apocalypse whiffs game 1, Namor whiffs game 2, let off for game 3, and now Apocalypse is whiffing again.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've been given every little handout.
We'll take advantage of everything we can get.
Of course.
On the left-hand side, it's pretty evens. So Werewolf moves, bumps to get in range 3 of Deadpool, who's sat on his back point, and he attacks Deadpool. I think he does a little bit of damage, but unfortunately the one I wanted was his wild, so I wanted to get the wild to place off so I could then be in the midst of them, but he doesn't get his wild. So it's evens on that left-hand side, and Pat takes a slender lead, but it's a low-scoring 3-4 at the end of that, basically because Apocalypse has not done his job.
Yeah.
So round 2 kicks off, and Werewolf dazes Deadpool. I think Werewolf gets his place off next to Deadpool in the first attack, hits him again, steals his cube, and is now stood triumphantly on the mutant madman. I think he flips it as well, actually. So I think Werewolf has a decent activation. Dazes one of his characters and steals a cube and flips it. Fist survives again against Apocalypse.
Oh.
But I think in this case, it's one of those ones where Pat has to moves Apocalypse to get on my back point. So he moves Apocalypse next to him. And this is where I think there is a slight problem with Apocalypse as a 6th threat. It's all on his dice. He didn't do well on his dice in this one. And it meant that he doesn't have any way of displacing Iron Fist. Like, he's got this throw, but it's so specific.
The throw needs the condition needs the wild. Yeah.
So I think Beast has basically done his Pestilence Bomb and then moved back onto the back point, picked up the cube, flipped the point. So Beast is holding 2 cubes and has flipped 1 Mutant Madman. So Beast is holding 3 objectives. Iron Fist then goes after surviving against Apocalypse and dazes Beast. So he's able to bump to get in range 3 of Beast, place off of Beast, and then do a 5 dice energy attack into Beast. And remember, Beast he's taken some damage already, and he's hexed.
Yeah.
So Iron Fist, despite being slow, because of the bump and the place, is able to get onto that back point, get the objective off of Beast, flip the point, and hold the cubes. But Iron Fist is looking pretty tired at this stage because he's taken a couple of hits from Apocalypse. I think he's struggling a little bit. But there's not a huge amount of threat there anymore. On the left side, I'm able to take advantage. I don't daze Blob. Blob is being a real pain. But I am able to flip. At one point, I have all of the Madmen. But then Toad, to finish the round, instead of retreating, he actually comes to my back left and flips it back off Blade. He gets his 2 successes off of it.
Strong.
And so at the end of the round, I go up. I've had a good round here, especially on that right-hand side, and I'm 10-7 up.
Wow. It's a big turn.
Yeah, it was a big turn, and I was feeling good about the turn. However, I was very worried about the subsequent turn because a lot of the points are on that right-hand side where people had taken quite a lot of damage. And I think after cube damage, Iron Fist was on 1 health left.
Right, okay. And Pat's got priority too.
Yeah, I'm expecting a bit of a clap back, and no surprises. He ums and ahs about who to go with, but he ends up going with Apocalypse, who does daze Iron Fist.
You'd hope so. It's taken him 3 activations.
I know, dazes Iron Fist, picks up his 2 cubes. Apocalypse is now holding 2 cubes. Werewolf then survives against Blob and is able to stay kind of relevant in this because he gets pushed away by Blob, bumps back in and attacks Deadpool, then gets to place off Deadpool, and then I do my siege turn, and I do a siege with Blade and Werewolf into Deadpool, but actually the dice abandon me on this stage, and Deadpool survives, and so instead of using a second activation with Werewolf to try and hope to spike, I actually retreat with Werewolf onto my back left and flip the Mutant Madman. Because Toad has interacted from range 2, so he's not actually contesting it. So it means that it's an easy enough flip for 4 dice, and he gets it. So that's a shame that Deadpool is alive, but actually, Werewolf is still scoring me the points. Blob then kind of activates last over there, flips one of the points, because Blade is kind of been pushed away at this stage. In fact, I think Deadpool went first, didn't daze either Blade or Werewolf, and Blob then goes after Werewolf, pushes Blade away, and flips that back left, hits Werewolf, but doesn't do any damage. I actually don't clap back with Werewolf because I'm worried that if I do, he'll just damage reduce and push me off the point, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
So then Blob fails his flip on my home one, thanks to Werewolf being stood on it. But Werewolf's now taken a bit of damage. I've also used instant recovery, which is the new exceptional healing.
Nice.
So it keeps Werewolf around a little bit longer. Instead of clapping back against Blob, I heal up a little bit. So it just makes Werewolf a little bit more survivable. So that's not ideal on the left-hand side. And then Wong is actually dazed by Deadpool, who steals Wong's cube. So Wong is kind of in the middle of the board-ish, Deadpool stands right in the middle of the board and flips the cube. I think I've got some activations mixed up on the back left, but that's the board state at the end of that round. Blade has been pushed away, Werewolf and Blob are fighting out my home objective, and Wong has been dazed by Deadpool, who is a cube in the middle of the board. And the big kicker for me at the end of the round is that Mummy gets dazed by Toad, because Toad is death, and Mummy's taken 3 damage, so Toad has a 7 dice builder.
That's quite, and plus potential rerolls from the evolution tokens.
Exactly. So the odds were pretty good for him, but that's a shame because he was kind of he's going to go last and flip everything back for me.
Yep.
So that's been a tough round, and Pat's pulled it back, and it's now 12-13 to Pat.
Oof. So, but still a point in it.
Yeah, there's a point in it, but he's managed to claw his way back in. I think Werewolf has been huge for me because he's stopped Blob doing flips and he's scoring a point.
But with 9 points still on the table, it's unlikely to go another round. This is probably the final round.
Exactly. So I need some big plates. So I then also have a bit of a choice to make. So Werewolf has taken another cube damage, so he's got 2 health left on the left-hand side fighting against Blob. Iron Fist wakes up, but Apocalypse is over on the right-hand side, ready to do Apocalypse things. So I go with Iron Fist. I make the decision. I go with Iron Fist. I bump. I do my gainer into Apocalypse, and then I spender him.
Nice. And get him activated. Oh.
Yeah, I spender him. I actually spike and daze him. Because, Apocalypse has taken a bit of damage because he's been holding cubes for a while.
Yeah. And his heal only happens after he's taken the damage in the first place. So if you can get the damage done and daze him, he's not healing. So that's only a good mechanism against chip damage when he's got health to be chipped.
Exactly. So it's a good opening gambit from Iron Fist. Apocalypse drops his objectives. Iron Fist actually can't pick them up because he's used all his power, so I slightly scatter them.
Of course.
I think he can pick one up, he just can't pick both of them up. So I scatter them, try and keep them away. Toad has also taken a chip damage from that, so Toad is on 1 left. So it's been a good opening turn. However, then all eyes turn to my back left, and I'm a bit worried about this because Blob, he's got 2 attacks, he's got rerolls to try and take out Werewolf. He hits Werewolf, he survives 1 attack. I then clap back. I do a bit of damage, but I was really hoping to just spike at Blob. Blob's taken a little bit of chip damage. If I could spike him off, then Werewolf survives. Pat then damage reduces, is about to push me, but it's a May push, and he almost pushed me into sacrifice range of Wong, and I was thinking, is this it? He catches himself, but then Werewolf tanks the next attack, and Werewolf is alive.
Wow.
I think Werewolf is alive on 1. I'm extremely lucky there. And to kind of add insult to injury, I think Blob fails the flip.
Oh, and it's physical, so he doesn't mind this one, does he?
No, but Werewolf is stood on the point.
Okay, so he needs his 2 successes. Sure.
Yeah. So with that, Werewolf, who's actually got quite a lot of power just because he's generated it in previous rounds and he's holding a cube, he moves. He bumps to get in range 3 of Toad, and he's in range 3 of Deadpool, who's got 2 power. He howls, so Deadpool loses 2 power. He then attacks Toad, does the 1 damage needed to place off of Toad, which gets him onto the Mutant Madmen. He then picks up one of Apocalypse's dropped cubes and flips the point. So it's an enormous swing from Werewolf almost dead to now suddenly Werewolf holding 2 cubes and being on the Mutant Madman. And actually, because now there's piece of terrain, there's Apocalypse, there's Iron Fist, there's Mummy, and there's Werewolf on that point, it's really difficult to get into. So actually, Beast, who's on that side, actually can't stand anywhere near enough to get on it. So that's a huge, huge moment because now Deadpool is stood in the middle of the board with no power, so can't do his place. Toad is dazed, Apocalypse is dazed, Blob has activated, and it's only Beast left. And so he passes a couple of times. Blade does the job for me on that back left, manages to flip the point back to me. Beast then goes, tries to KO Werewolf, only has 1 attack to do it though, so Werewolf survives. Mummy goes, flips the back right point off of Beast, who's kind of had to move forward. And with that, the final score, Midnight Suns take the win, 18-16.
Bravo. That's huge. I mean, It sounds like a bit of a perfect storm, that last round. The Apocalypse team that you're facing, it's got the tools to do so much, but it relies so heavily on its 6 threat. You've got 3 threat who can essentially remove that activation. You know it's the final round. So if you can take his activation from the game, you can really see why Pat was trying to take him out early doors. You know, he's played enough games. He knows that spender gets more powerful the longer the game goes on. And then your other tool, this Howl, seems to have been a fairly effective way to deal with him. You know, he's got all these places, superpowers, etc., whether it's on the cards or not. You know, his evolution tokens he can spend on them are, you know, they're finite. And the fact that you can then reduce the character's powers so they're not double dipping either with the token, that, you know, they can only use the tokens if there are any. That means they're not using them for rerolls. You know, he can't leverage his superpowers. Yes, you get a little bit lucky, you know, Werewolf sticking around, but I mean, he's got 4 physical defense and a fairly large health pool. So, you know, let's not put that completely down to luck. It feels like you had the tools, though, to deal with what you were facing in that final round to make sure you capitalise on the points.
Yeah, I think that was the thing, is that early on, Apocalypse didn't show up. In the 2 games that I've played against Apocalypse now, that's been the big problem.
Yeah.
I mean, if Apocalypse doesn't show up, that's 6 threat, and he's quite dicey. But yeah, that final activation, I mean, Werewolf was great all game. Healing factor and the instant recovery just means that he stays alive quite a lot longer than he has any right to.
Out of all healing factor characters, is he got one of the largest health pools, like, overall?
Yeah, so he's got 7 and he's got healing factor 2.
Is he 7/7 on both sides?
7/7, yeah.
7/7 on both sides, healing factor 2. You know, Sabretooth Apex Predator, I mean, he's a threat down, but he's 7/6, but he's only healing factor 1.
Yeah.
Wolverine is 7/6, he's healing factor 2. So again, not quite the same.
If exceptional healing was still around, Werewolf would be absolutely nuts.
Yeah, you can see why they've taken that card out of the game just before characters like him have come into the throw. I'm surprised, obviously, they didn't bring out a new card specifically for Weapon X characters, for instance. Yeah, Werewolf would be here. He would be the new... Do you remember when the new Ultron was everywhere with Age of Ultron? I feel like Werewolf would be doing exactly the same if you had exceptional healing.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Archie. That's 4-0.
Thank you. Yes, I couldn't believe it.
Is that an event win? I mean, I can see Angus won, but obviously against a 3-1 person. So did you place first?
I did. I placed first. Angus and I had the exact same strength of schedule, and I think I won it by 1 VP.
Yes, I've got the long shanks up. Yeah, both 1.69 with your strength of schedule. You've got 73 VP scored across the day, and Angus has got 72 VP scored across the day. So, you know, by in your own words, the finest of margins.
Yeah. And looking back on it, you know, me not moving Wong onto that point at the start of round 1 came in clutch.
Yeah, because it gave you... I suppose that's given you the additional VPs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's giving you to get over the line. That's huge for Cable's Conquest, because this is our first singles win on the podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's just for listeners. You know, Archie's a serious player here, and he's just beaten Pat. So, like, you know, he's pretty serious. But it's not your first Bad Moon victory, is it? You have won an event there before.
Yeah, but before Cable's Conquests.
Before it mattered. Before we started taking score. I mean, what an amazing way as well to round out 2024 for you. You've got a team's victory at Nations, and you managed to play one of your teammates in this event, and you managed to take home a singles victory as well in a final against none other than Pat Dunford, who's, you know, one of the absolute bosses at this game.
Yeah, I'm delighted. I couldn't believe it. I thought my Midnight Suns list had some legs, but I didn't quite realise how many legs it had.
Well, let's pause there at round 4 and let's go into a short debrief to round out the episode.
Sounds good.
I don't mind being wrong, as long as I can correct my mistakes.
Congratulations, Archie. 4 wins, a hell of a performance. Fantastic way to round out 2024 for us on Cable's Conquest. I'm absolutely buzzing for you. You must be absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, absolutely buzzing.
Go on, talk me through what you felt were the biggest strengths of this Midnight Suns roster from what you learnt during the event.
So, going into the event, one of the big things I was worried about with this roster was that their displacement is quite poor. And so I'm relying quite heavily on the attrition side of things. And actually, that was the thing that I was most impressed with. it's so simple, but it's the range one place is so important because it allows them so often to double tap. And actually I was very pleased because the way that I designed the roster was to maximize the effectiveness of this, of their mobility plus their being able to double tap. And that ultimately I think was what won me enough points. Someone like Werewolf by night, he's very dicey, but if you're rolling enough dice, you're going to get the successes. And so that's why I've gone this 5 wide where, okay, there's Wong, but then the other 4 characters all hit pretty hard for their threat value. And if you roll enough dice, then at least one is going to spike and do the job. And then you throw in the likes of Siege of Darkness, which gives you extra attacks, and Bats the Ghost Hound is clutch. That is a clutch card. That is an every game card for me.
And that's, just to remind listeners, that allows you to change one of the dice to any face. Is that correct?
Exactly. And it's in both attack and defense. It has to be a Midnight Suns character, but it just means that, say you need to squeak that one more damage through Bats. Say you need to just block one more damage, Bats. And the other thing about the defensive side, which I kind of hadn't fully appreciated, is there's actually quite a lot of healing in the roster. With Wong, obviously healing characters, but you've also got Blade who heals himself, Hela who heals herself, Werewolf by night who's got healing factor, Mummy who heals himself. There's a lot of healing. So if you can do that survive on one thing that's so annoying in MCP, they can then capitalize on it.
Yeah.
And so it's that combination where they're a little bit more tanky than you think, and they're a little bit more attrition-y in it. And those margins just add up. And it meant that when I came up against the likes of Hulk, Apocalypse, those incremental wins against those big characters meant that they were spending a 6 threats activation to actually do nothing.
Yeah. I feel like it's so annoying to anyone having a character survive on 1. You're seriously punishing your opponent by surviving on 1 because that 1 often becomes 3 health left with 1 kicking around.
Yeah.
Or someone like Blade who can heal up from the bleeds as well. Or Werewolf who, you know, he's had 2 cracking games in this event. He's healing factoring up or instant recovery to sort of keep him in the game. I really felt like sort of listening to those 4 games, you were capitalizing on the volume of attacks by not just going wide, but by staying affiliated with those wide characters. Obviously, knowing that, you know, Wong was an every game piece, but you know he's not really going to be taking advantage of Siege. He's not really going to be getting into the fight. So more often than not, your other 4 characters were affiliated. And in the 2 games where you brought Hela, well, Hela I felt like was a really good piece into that game plan because she's got multiple sources of damage dealing.
Yeah.
So while she's not, you know, taking advantage of Siege of Darkness, she's got that move which also then heals her up if she does damage from it. Her mystic attacks are also leaning into, you know, most of your opponents, their worst defense will be their mystic. You know, it's the most common like low defense across the game. And I imagine when you're against high mystic defense, she just doesn't come to the table. So you're really taking advantage.
And actually she's got physical as well.
Right.
Her range 4 is mystic, but her other 2 attacks are physical. Yeah, I think Hela was brilliant for that, for exactly the reasons you've said. Like, she's mobile and she hits hard. And I think I brought her along as this like safe grab, but actually she does a lot more than that. The other thing is, I think you nailed it, is that most of my attacks with most of my characters are either energy or mystic. And I think that's what elevates these attacks to being better than others, because they're generally going against a slightly weaker defense. So if you're getting that one more success through, that can often be the difference between a dazed character and a character surviving on 1.
And with your high volume of attacks, if you're only doing 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 damage each attack, that's normally fine. But because it's energy or mystic, you are likely to be getting that 1 or 2 damage each time.
Exactly.
Which just allows you to whittle these characters down. I mean, you've taken Hulks off the table in this event. You've dealt with the likes of Apocalypse multiple times. You know, these high health pools that you've been able to chip away at to the point where, you know, your opponent's pulling them off the table.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's a really fun new style that I've not played a huge amount of, this like wide attrition. Normally I like to play these kind of control teams that aren't like, you know, the Spider Foes is the prime example of a team which kind of hit semi-hard, but their thing is their control. They've got loads of ways of displacing models. This is totally the opposite, where it's got very few ways of displacing models, but it hits hits hard and it's great. And I think, I would say across the course of the day, I got the rub of the green on the dice on more than one occasion. But I think this is what MCP can do. Like dice are dice, and especially MCP dice. And so this list is able to capitalize quite effectively on these spikes.
We're talking about volume here, so you're rolling enough dice.
Yeah.
And actually, average dice are fine for you.
Yeah.
And it's unlikely that you would consistently get poor dice across that volume of attack. So actually, you're finding a way to hopefully try and balance that variance.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, those taller teams, great big pot of dice in their hands, but they just do it once or twice.
Yeah.
And yes, you expect it to wipe someone off the table, but if it doesn't, well, that's it. And that's what we saw Apocalypse do. Whereas, you're death by 1,000 cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So you also in this event had another unaffiliated character who was having a bit of an audition in Craven. He didn't make the table in any of your 4 games. Looking ahead to the Mutant Weekender, where you've talked about wanting to play Midnight Suns, and this was a bit of an audition ahead of that. Is Craven sticking around, or did you just not find the opportunity to want to play him?
It's really tricky because, like we say, this was a training event for me for this Mutant Weekender, and I won, which is amazing. But
brilliant.
It makes me loath to change my roster too much. Yeah, there were 2 characters that didn't come. There was Craven and there was Dr. Voodoo.
Right.
I think Dr. Voodoo has to stay because he's got specific matchups which he's really good into. Specifically webs, because he can steal. He's got an inbuilt
and he's
steal.
affiliated, so it's not
affiliated.
such a hardship keeping him in there.
And I think that is where Craven might drop out of the roster. Because I think he does exactly what I need him to do. I think he's brilliant at all of the things that we've just discussed, but he's unaffiliated. And so more often than not, I want to take my affiliated 3s. And I basically don't want to be taking more than one unaffiliated character. And actually, unless someone is really bringing something to the table, like Hela does with her central grab, I don't know why I'd go with a 3-threat, unaffiliated 3-threat over an affiliated 3-threat. And so while I stand by, I think Craven is brilliant in Midnight Suns, when push came to shove this weekend, I chose not to take him because I wanted affiliated 3s to capitalize on the Siege of Darkness and Bats. They're the 2 cards that I think are really important.
And I wonder, come January, and you're really gunning for it at the Mutant Weekender against some of the top players. How often is Craven coming instead of Iron Fist or the Mummy, who I thought, from the sounds of it, had cracking days. They really turned up.
Iron Fist in particular was really, really key to a lot of my success because of that attack. That attack is ridiculously good. And it's 8 power, but he generates power pretty well. And then I think Mummy is a really effective damage dealer and actually plays kind of a similar role. He's a bit more of a turret than Craven, but he plays a similar role. The person that I would consider swapping out would be Chosen of Bast for Craven, but I think Chosen of Bast is specific to the pay-to-flip game. Yep. And I think his Insight of the Ancients, while it didn't come in clutch in any of my games, it could.
Yep.
And because he's affiliated, he's a medium move, medium base, wall crawler, all of this fun stuff, he stays in over Craven. Craven is the one that unfortunately might get the chop.
So you've got some thinking. I'm not going to quiz you on that. We've got episodes in the future where we can really delve into who makes it, and you've got a little bit of time now to think about it as well. Before we close out, any final remarks on a historic victory for the Cables Conquest?
I was really pleased. I really enjoyed all of my games. I love going down to Bad Moon. It was nice to bring Carl along as well because he'd never been to Bad Moon before, so it was great to bring someone local down. And just hang out with all the people that I've hung out with for ages. And I didn't get my first win over Pat, which is pretty amazing. I think, thanks for letting me, Pat. See you next time. I'm sure you'll get me back. But delighted with how it went. Although one comment I would make is that the overall prize for Train Wars, which Pat ended up winning, I didn't thwart his plans quite. He pipped Angus again on strength of schedule, I think, was the Wakanda Battle for the Throne box. And I saw this and Norbert was saying, the winner's going to win this. And then when I won, I was thinking, do I win that? Is that the prize for this event? And no, it was across the 2 events. So unfortunately, I didn't win that. But I had a moment where I was like, oh my God, that's an awesome prize.
It's like almost £100 worth of prize. That's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, it was a great day.
Excellent. Well done. And I look forward to the next one. Let's see if you can keep this winning streak on.
Indeed.
People should now fear you going into the Mutant Weekend. Surely you've now got to be, one of the favourites.
Oh, I'm not sure about that, but hopefully I can ruffle a few feathers there as well.
Excellent.
Anyway, so yeah, that was a great episode to record. When I won, I was pretty excited to do this. But to round out, Curtis, tell the listeners, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. You can see all my painting on there at simple_edge highlights. Or if you just want to sort of drop me a message, anything to do with the pod, anything to do with the hobby, you can find me on Discord. I'm Curtis H. And you should hopefully be able to sort of spy on me at various events on Longshanks. I'm also called Curtis H on there as well. How about yourself, Archie? Where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram at Smeagol's Corner. I've been doing a lot of kind of Midnight Suns posting, trying to get my models photographed, especially after this weekend. They deserve some moment in the limelight. And then I'm also on Discord as Archie RC, and then I'm Archie Cable on Longshanks. So check it out, and please do reach out if you have any questions, queries, criticisms. We'd love to get involved and kind of get communicating with the community. I should also shout out our YouTube channel, who our audio whiz Louis is kind of updating, and we actually have some pretty exciting plans in the new year for the YouTube. I won't say any more about it. Both Curtis and I are very excited to reveal it all to you all around the Mutant Weekender, so please do check that out. We'll let you know when that kind of comes out. But thank you very much for listening, everyone. Thank you, Curtis, for hosting and coming on this journey with me. And until next time, keep up the conquest.
The name's Cable. Remember it.